Hey, Theo here. I'm just so excited to talk to you about what I learned about shareholder value from my one-wheel ride today. It was so awesome.
Who let you in here?
Oh.
Sorry about that, guys. Someone broke into my studio. I had to get rid of them really quick, but we're here. We're ready to get started. Got a lot to talk about today. What's good, nerds? Phone going off like mad as I am trying to mute it. Sorry. It's an event in the city, so everything's chaos at the moment. It can stop by for a bit earlier. Sadly, he has to go be at the event that I am probably going to be at tomorrow, which is why I'm streaming today instead. Sorry for the last minute. I got my whole schedule screwed up this week. It's bad. I screwed up. I thought I would do the event today, stream tomorrow, and then film something on Thursday with a company that I was working with. It turns out the filming's actually Sunday, which is also alumni demo day, so I am busy there. The event doesn't actually start until tomorrow, so we couldn't do anything when we got there. So we just got our badges and came back. Tomorrow's the day I have to be at the event. Thursday seems chill-ish, but yeah, I'm in chaos. So yeah, sorry for the last minute stream on a weird time. Doing our best. I can check your historical GIFs. I don't actually know if there's an easy way for me to do that. It's annoying, but if I don't have the leaderboard up, which I think I don't have much control of anymore, you have to gift something for it to say. I'm not saying gift. Do not gift. Do not do it. But I can't see. Thank you all for coming through, though. Appreciate it. Thank the people I missed as you were getting started. We got Ronan, first sub of the day. 29 months. Jesus. Halo with the Prime. Level 0x12. That's a new UI. Barrel showing up 2 months in. Always good to see you, man. Tramp up through 27 gifts. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. They've gifted 69 in the channel. Nice. That's a solid one to have landed on. Should be 42. Yep, you were right. You landed on it. Good job. Solid guesswork there to pull that off. Yeah, there have been a lot of people filming things in my studio forever now, but yes, there's more of it going on at the moment. Jesus Christ, you single-handedly bumped this hype train up to a level 7 with that, Tramp. Good work. Thank you for that. Right click and try to rename a long chat in what, T3 chat? Is there a bug there? If so, I'll go fix it like after this. It's slow? Fuck. Yeah, we'll fix that for sure. Oh, I could see how that... No, that shouldn't cause a re-render for the content of the chat. That's annoying if that does. We'll fix that for sure. Yep. Thank you. Good catch. We will fix that later. Oh, this is really cool. Better T-Stack is coming along great. It seems like that project is doing very, very well at the moment, and more seems like a thing I might start recommending. This is super cool, actually. I mostly use Gemini, Flash, and O4 Mini nowadays. It shouldn't do this, but it might in its current implementation, which I'll fix. Tweak CN and better T-Stack. Yeah, those are really powerful things for those who want to have more control. And good shit. My allergies are kicking in because we were just outside a bunch and the city's going nuts. Do I lose money when we offer T3 chat for $1? Yes, quite a bit. In fact, we also have had people who insist on getting refunds for the $1 they spent. And then we have to eat a lot more than $1. There used to be a custom tier 3 chat channel on Discord, but someone started leaking it to haters and like random YouTubers who wanted to talk shit on me. So I had to shut it down because it was just people were taking quotes out of context from 3 years ago to talk shit on me from a $25 only tiered private chat that I treated as like a place to vent with my community. And that got stolen from us by some bigger assholes. So yeah, sadly that's gone. I'm sorry. I miss it. I really do. It was really nice having a place where I could just talk with people about shit. But the fact that the like sanctity of that like channel was broken by some asshole leaking things from it means that we can't do it anymore. The fact that somebody would pay $25 to get access to data just to like take something out of context and talk shit is awful. Yeah, there is one benefit to tier 3, which is you're able to @ me in the Discord. But that's it. Yeah, right now there's no benefits to tier 3. I'm sorry. I want to come up with more, but also I don't want to encourage people to contribute more money unless they like really want to. I don't like the idea of restricting people from access to my content and my community. And I also just can't spend as much time in Discord nowadays. Like I am so disgustingly busy. The real reason I'm streaming today, if we're going to be fully honest, is because the content calendar went from having over 40 videos of backlog to like 6. And we need more videos. And I have a bunch of shit I want to talk about. I always do. You guys know that. But like the backlog is gone now. That also means, this isn't even that high priority. I'll put this on mid. Don't want both. Oh. There. Cool. Annoying UI. That also means that we're down to almost no blonde videos. This one will still be blonde. That one will still be blonde. That one will be. That one won't be. That one will be. This one I might throw out, but it would be. So we're down to 5 videos where my hair is still blonde. And we're at the end of the blonde Theo saga. Twitter's down again. That's hilarious. I love that Twitter's down yet again. I'll have to make jokes about that in the T3 chat being down video. It's actually going to be annoying because I wanted to cite my tweet. And if I can't get to it, that makes that much more annoying. Like, significantly more annoying. Okay, cool. I got the direct link. That'll make that less annoying. Here for that. Paste. I need to find the convex blog post. Okay, it's annoying if I can't get to it because things are down. Let me notification surf again to find it. It's like the only thing I can do because the feed is down. Okay, cool. That works. Okay. Think I have everything I need here. Thank you guys for the links. Yeah, Twitter being down makes the whole stream much more annoying. We have to change a lot about search first. Specifically, we need to make search cost more credits before we can let it just be on by default, because otherwise people will be searching constantly, and it costs money. Okay, also, more than usual, I would love other ideas for things to film. I have a pile here of stuff I want to do, but if you guys have things that you're interested in, this hasn't been a big news couple of weeks, honestly. So, yeah. Actors? Give me a good article, Gabriel. We'll consider it. But first and foremost, T3 chat outage to coverage time. It is cool. Oh, I forgot to ping Discord, and I forgot to do the marker. I hope that me doing a real marker doesn't break things. Let me offset. We'll aim for 1650. Marker, T3 outage for real. That might break things in my script, Ben. I'm sorry. You can hopefully figure out how to fix it if so. Let me ping Discord, and then we will get started for real. Cool. If you guys if y'all have watched my channel for a while, there's two things you almost certainly know. One is that I've been changing databases in T3 chat too much, and the other is that I really, really, really don't like downtime. As such, this is kind of a sad video to make because we had our first major outage with T3 chat. In the past, we've had blips where as I was making changes, things were down for a few users for a few minutes. But we've never had anything before like we had this most recent Sunday, where for a couple hours, the site was almost entirely unusable. I want to be really transparent and straightforward with this. It's not acceptable. We take our uptime incredibly seriously, and we're going out of our way to make sure that going forward, you can use and trust T3 chat to be there when you need it. As I've been preparing things to use to, I'll cut straight here. I was preparing assets to start talking about this. I was preparing the assets I needed for this video as I started recording, and noticed that Twitter is down as well. You literally cannot go to a feed and get posts. Apparently, I've never posted on Twitter, which you guys know is certainly not the case. Thankfully, if you have the direct link, it still seems to mostly work, and I've managed to find, on a very laggy, broken website, my original post taking accountability for this outage and describing what went wrong and how we plan to prevent it going forward, as well as a blog post from our friends over at Convex, because as much as I don't want them to shoulder the blame for this outage, there are things that they had implemented incorrectly on their side that caused it. I think this is going to be a very interesting video. It's not the usual why this tech is cool or how to prevent this type of error. It's going to more so be a breakdown of how we planned this migration, what issues we ran into throughout it, and what went wrong once we actually hit the go live button that caused these problems on Sunday. If you're interested in breakdowns of real engineering work with actual loads with hundreds of thousands of users, this could be an interesting deep dive for you. That all said, this costs us a ton of money and time, and Convex bills are now actually a thing that we have to pay. As such, we need a quick word from today's sponsor to cover some costs, and then we'll dive right in. Everybody's saying X is working. Regions, man. My region is not. I cannot see my posts on my feed right now. So I'm happy it's working for you. Good for you guys. Going to profiles does not work at the moment. I considered having Convex sponsor this video because I thought it'd be funny, but no, we'll do someone else. If I even do the sponsor, we might just cut that out entirely. To be decided. So let's start at a really high level. What went wrong? Like, what was this outage? Because it wasn't like people went to the site and then saw an error or a thing blocking the page. The problem was a little bit deeper. The problem was that chats were not... Problem was threefold. Primarily, the issue is that chats weren't loading. You would just sit there and nothing would load in. Creating new chats was also barely working, and honestly, just everything was lagging a ton. The reason for that was the WebSocket connection layer that you connect to with Convex was having issues. So the actual thing that sends the data down isn't just a traditional HTTP request. With Convex, you create a WebSocket connection on the client and subscribe to queries. So you get the initial data when you create the subscription, and then you get the rest when it changes and other things occur on the service. Problem was that that connection layer entirely fell over. In order to understand what problems we had that led to this place, I think a quick overview of this migration and what it looked like for us will make it a bit easier to understand. You might recognize some parts of this from the previous videos I've done about our database changes, but this will be an overview of why we are doing this. Before the Convex move, we had all of our data in a traditional MySQL DB. This DB was on PlanetScale. I still dearly and deeply love PlanetScale. I wish that they were the right product for us right now. The issue is that I found myself effectively rebuilding Convex on top of PlanetScale myself in order to make all of this possible. And that just wasn't maintainable for a 2.5 to 3.5 person team. Convex is a much bigger team with really talented people doing nothing but data sync stuff. And I wanted what they had, and it was a lot easier for us to move there than it was for me to rebuild all the things they did on top of T3 Chat in the database that we had before. The other harsh reality was that, the other important thing to understand is that the switch from the MySQL DB over to Convex sync engine is that this isn't just like we change where the data is stored. This effectively was a rewrite of the whole app. T3 Chat is like, let me see how many lines of code it is quick. T3 Chat's about 25,000 lines of code. My PR changed 10,000 of them. This was pretty much a rewrite. As such, this wasn't just I changed the data store. This was an entirely new code base. And as such, I couldn't just put on a feature flag where your data would go to one DB or the other. This was an entirely different deployment with an entirely different experience for users. I could theoretically put a middleware on the URL and split which traffic goes to the new one versus the old one. But what I really wanted to do was a hard cutoff where we would pick a day and going forward, everyone would be on the new code base. And when a user signed in or opened the page for the first time, I would pull their data over to the Convex sync engine at that point. But that led to some problems. The initial implementation I had here was pretty rudimentary. The pieces are important to understand. So we had the traditional MySQL DB, we had the Convex sync engine. We also have the Vercel Next.js TRPC backend and endpoints. And then also we have the user client experience. These are the four parts that existed. We had the old MySQL DB that had all of the user's old data. And the way things would work before is we had that the user experience and the traditional DB with the backend in between, a user would make a request. Actually, it's a lot easier if I draw lines down from here. There we go, cool. The user would make a request for their sync data. This request would go, wrong button. Request would go to the DB and do the like drizzle call to get data. And this one was pretty lazy. I would usually just grab all of the data for you as a user. So all your threads and all your messages. We would then send back all data. And then that would go back to you where you would persist in indexed DB. Indexed DB is a data store in the browser that you can use to store data. All of your data used to be stored in the browser, but we ran into such an absurd number of issues as we were trying to do things for different browsers, getting Safari to work, getting multi-tab to work. IndexedDB just became a constant source of pain. There are whole companies that are just trying to make IndexedDB behave properly. Shout out to Dexy for making it usable at all. It was a phenomenal library that I love dearly, so much so that it almost tricked me into using IndexedDB for longer than we should have because the API just sucks. But this was our setup for a long time. Things are quite different with convex involved, and it's going to look more complex initially, but I promise you it is not. People are also getting confused about the order being right to left, so I'm going to switch things over so that it's a little more logical. But the biggest difference is before we had the user client, then the backend, then the traditional DB, and the DB was behind the backend. Convex, you can kind of put it either side, but the place where you're expected to, if you're using it properly, is between here. You can even use convex as your entire backend if you want to, because they have backend functions. So the way that things now work in T3 chat is you query for thread data, get threads. That calls in convex the right TypeScript function that you wrote, calls their database in order to get the data, and then sends back those threads in a subscription. So this get threads call creates a subscription, and then we send back the data. And then if another change happens, let's say the backend sends an update to convex that says thread name changed. Instead of me having to query the backend to know something changed, since convex is connected via WebSocket, it would then send the change down to the user. That is updated thread data. And this is the magic of it. It made a lot of things way more simple, where instead of having the backend try to send the right data both to the user and to the database and keep everything in sync and hope for the best, the amount of edge cases, like something like deletions is so complex, because what happens if you delete a thread or delete a message on the client, but the server is still generating the result? What's the right state there? And if you open up another device that has that thread that you deleted on the thing you were on before, should it sync that back up? How does that all behave? And things like deleted messages reappearing, generated messages stopping halfway through and not restarting, all these types of problems were very persistent, because previously when the user, let me flip this quick. And this was complex because before the user would make a request to generate message, and the backend would effectively have to send it to you and send it to the database, or, which we found what was much more stable, is it sends it to you, and then you afterwards would send it to the DB. Obviously, you would actually use the backend to do it, but the point I'm trying to make here is that the message gets sent to you, and then another function is hit to send it back to the DB. So if the client goes down, the backend no longer is sending it anywhere, everything sucks. But if I send it to the DB every time it changes, the write throughput is absurd. Getting the right balance here was really annoying. Convex made it significantly easier. You get the data, you're now subscribed. My backend can write changes to convex, and you just get the update. Love this. made things a lot easier. Still couldn't handle the absurd throughput that we were getting when we were generating messages, because these messages generate and update 300 times a second on some of these like models. Like Gemini can do 200 to 300 tokens per second. So if we write all of that to DB and sync all of that down, you get the whole row every change. It's just unrealistic amounts of data. The place we landed is a nice hybrid model where the backend will stream the message to you as an optimistic update, but then it sends the final state to convex, so you get that persisted. The results, much cleaner, feels really good overall, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I might do a whole separate breakdown of why I love convex. Let me know if you're interested in the comments. But for now, I want to talk about the migration. To talk about the migration, we need all of the parts here, including that traditional MySQL backend, or DB. Okay. So we now have all the parts. Here is how things would, for the most part, work with the migration, at least the first attempt. The first attempt would have the user go to Next.js backend and say, hey, I want to migrate. I'm going to change all of these to be dotted lines to make it a little easier to see. Darker color too, cool, yeah. So user client would send this request to my backend that says, hey, I want to migrate. It would then do a few things. First, it would go to that traditional MySQL DB and get all data. It would send that data back. Obviously, it's a SQL request. That's how that works. User data. I would then chunk the data, and I would write all of the chunks piece by piece, starting with the chunks of attachments. So attachment, chunks. And it would do multiple. So if you had more than 100 attachments, it would chunk it into groups of 100. I would then do thread chunks. And then after that, I would do message chunks. And once all of these went through, I would do one last pass. That is the finalize migration. And this would just set a flag in convex that says this user has completed their migration. Relatively simple, all things considered. And in all of my testing, even with really large amounts of data, this was working great. And once that was all done, you would get the sync event to the user that says migration done. And now you could start using T3 chat. We got this all working. We were pretty happy with it. We hit the go button. And what happened the first time is a bunch of users got stuck in a weird state where the migration was continuing to loop. I talked about this a bit in my database change video before, but the TLDR of what went wrong is that the JWT we had for users who had signed in for the first time on a really old version of T3 chat, it had multiple different IDs in it. So we had like, let me make this code format. So we had subject, which would be a user ID. We also had properties, and properties was a nested object that had ID, which would also be user ID, as well as like email, etc. So we were using subject as the identifier. The problem that we were getting was that users would run a migration, everything would seem fine, but then it would keep trying to migrate. The reason this would happen is that subject wasn't always the correct ID. Sometimes it was malformatted because of a bug in the, or this is because of a bug in, this is because of a bug in OpenAuth, which was the auth library that we're using. Rolling your own auth is really fun until you run into these problems and then you question why you ever did it. I gladly would have paid the price for any other auth provider to have not lost the insane amount of time I lost to this bug. Like straight up. It was not worth it. I regret rolling my own auth for this project, straight up. OpenAuth's a great library. I actually quite enjoy it, and it was the right thing for the time, for the choice. But this bug cost me so much. This bug cost me so much time and money. It's hard to put into words. That was why the first migration failed. We started using this nested properties ID, which was always correctly formatted. That fixed a lot of issues. But I was nervous enough that we didn't want to just flick this on for everyone. That's why we introduced the T3 Chat beta, where you could opt in going to a different URL, because remember, it's an entirely different code base. You go to beta.t3.chat, and you'd go here. You would migrate the first time you went. You'd have the little loading spinner saying, we're migrating your data. It would do all of this stuff, and you'd be good to go. That was much better. We had a lot of people migrate over. We kept a close eye on the traffic. We actually, crazy enough, had about 1/4 of our users move over to the beta, which was awesome. And I greatly owe all of the people who took the time to try out the T3 Chat beta. It helped us a ton with understanding the performance characteristics that made all of this possible. That gave us the confidence that we were in a pretty good spot to hit the on switch and make the migration. So I tried again. It failed again. We were down for about 5 minutes, but that outage took down the beta entirely. So the beta was down for like an hour as things recovered, but I just flipped back to the old build. A couple people had to refresh twice because they got hit with this twice when we were figuring it out. But we had a lot more data to look into this time. What we found the second time we did the migration was that there was a huge throughput of mutations that were causing the problem. Since if we had 500 people on the website at the same time when this change came out, all 500 would run this at the same time. I wasn't doing any queuing beyond you would send your threads first, then messages, then finalize. But if 10 users did it at the same time, all 10 would go at once. The beta, somebody caught this in chat, yeah. The way that we did the beta effectively became a rolling update because users slowly rolled into the beta. So the traffic there, despite being representative, like if we just 4x'd our traffic from the beta, things would have been totally fine. But we didn't 4x the traffic from the beta. For 5 minutes, we 400x'd the traffic from the beta. And that throughput was too much. Or so we thought. This is actually where things start to get fun. We'll get there later on. Because we all, Convex and ourselves, had bad assumptions throughout this that had to be disproven at many points throughout the journey. This was now concerning enough to us that we realized we needed to queue these migrations. Instead of just running all of them all at once, we needed to parallelize it and put a limit on how many could run concurrently. As we probably should have from the start, but honestly, we thought we could make this hard cut, move on, and not have to worry about it. We were wrong. Let me make sure I don't leak things. I'm updating my editor quick. I'm on the early access for Cursor, so I have updates a lot. Cool. Here we go. The pattern that they introduced me to, or as I was working with Convex, they introduced me to a pattern that they had as one of their components that was actually really cool and made this a lot easier. That pattern is their work pool component. I know the word component is confusing for us as React devs, but their idea of components are these pre-made utilities that they built that work inside of the Convex context to do different types of work. And work pools are incredibly cool. You create a work pool by defining it in your app config. So now I have components.migration work pool. This is a defined thing that exists in my app definitions convex config here. So a work pool that we defined here with the name migration work pool. This all exists. Now I can call this other places like here where I define migration work pool with a max parallelism limit of 10. So this can only run 10 things at a time. Everything else will get queued if you try to queue up more stuff. And now I have queue migration work, which is an endpoint that a user hits when we detect they should be migrating. We throw if they're not auth, which should never happen due to the way I fixed and set up auth stuff. And now they call migration ID. And now they call the work pool with an enqueue action. This queues up some work to do in the work pool with a given set of arguments. And since this is convex, this internal migration thing, this is just an API that I defined, and I can command click and go to it just like you do in tRPC. Super nice. All type safe as well, of course. Do migration action is an internal action, takes in a user ID, finalize so that I can run this in the background and not finalize the migrations, as well as the user prompt customization and the user configuration, because those weren't stored on the server before. So I need to wait for the user to be able to send that up to start the migration. I then fetch your data from our backend, which is a bit annoying. The relationship between Convex, the backend, and my backend on Vercel is the single thing with Convex that hasn't been my favorite yet. It's nice because it is just JavaScript, so you could do something stupid like give it an environment variable for the URL you're deploying to and have it work. But in dev, this was annoying, and I actually still have an ngrok tab open in my terminal here. You'll see number 1, the bottom there is ngrok, because that's how I would have Convex call the backend in order to get the data that we have to migrate. I even still have the header to skip ngrok warnings for this in there. Yeah. I would then error out, so I have logs if it fails. I would then parse it with super JSON parsing if it succeeded. I use super JSON instead of normal JSON, so things like date times will be in the correct format. I don't have to convert from number to date. I log how much stuff we're about to do. And now here in this action, I go through each chunk and I migrate it. I go through each chunk of threads, I migrate it. I go through each chunk of messages and I migrate it. If they have prompt customization, I include that. And if they have user config, I include that too. And then I finalize it if the finalize is set to true by updating, we're calling the wrap up migration function, which just sets on the user config that the migration is done. Pretty simple. And it's actually really nice with Convex that this type of code isn't some crazy custom syntax. It's just all if this thing, for loop, do the thing. It's one of my favorite things about Convex is you are just writing TypeScript, but you're not taking a performance hit for it. That is meaningful. It's really, really nice. And now these actions can only have, and since I put this in the work pool, this migrate action can only have 10 running at a time. So if a new one gets queued up, it just sits in the queue and waits until the other 10 are done. So it's impossible to have more than 10 of these running at the same time. I was concerned enough with our launch that we actually bumped it all the way down to 3. And then we shipped. And it worked. At least we thought. About 5 minutes in, performance went to shit again. And this time I felt really bad. There's an additional detail I forgot to include here, which is that our traffic for T3 chat fluctuates a lot throughout the day and week. On weekdays, midday, the traffic is at its highest by far. But on weekends around midnight, it's a lot less traffic, about half as much. As such, we plan to do the migration on Friday night around midnight. As such, we plan to do the migration around midnight on Saturday night. Then I went and double checked the data, and I saw we were in the lowest point when I checked, which was around 5 p.m. Turns out I was looking at UTC time, even though I was certain I had post hog set in PST. The low point was midnight UTC, which is around 6 p.m. my time. So I made the executive decision to migrate us then, because I wanted to do it during that window of lowest traffic, so it would be the smoothest rolling migration possible. And it went well for a little bit, but quickly users started having issues. People weren't able to connect to the WebSocket layer. Queries were getting really slow. It was getting really bad. And when I looked at the numbers, it looked really bad. The query throughput was absurd. And most importantly, and this was the really scary part, when I went to the dashboard, it would lag out and crash. And the Convex dashboard is a lifesaver. It's so, so good. So having that not working was terrifying. I felt like I had no idea what was or wasn't functioning for our users. So I made the decision to roll us back again. This was the third failed attempt to migrate us to Convex. And I was bummed. Unlike my other attempts, Jamie, who's one of the founders at Convex, was not around to help because he was out at a movie with his family. And I felt so bad. But despite that, He actually left the movie and sat on a bench and debugged with us on his phone alongside his other co-founder, James. And we found some really important details. It turns out the query throughput was one of the biggest issues. Let me open up Slack so I can find the screenshots quick. Oh no, what did I do there? Okay, here we go. This was the load. We did the migration right around 7:30, had a spike then, it chilled out, then it spiked a ton, and that's when it crashed. We were absolutely within the right limits, especially now. Previously, we were pretty convinced the problem was the throughput for writing mutations. That was certainly some amount of a problem, but it wasn't the problem that was causing the issues that we were seeing. It certainly wasn't the problem that caused our queries to flatline to zero because of the throughput. The issue ended up being a couple much more subtle things. To better understand them, I want to go back here where we can discuss how convex works. So the way convex works is I get the threads when I call my getThread function. The way convex works is I get the threads when I call the getThread function, and now I'm subscribed to that set of threads. If a change happens, the update comes down. What happens if these threads are all being updated constantly because a migration is running? You have a lot more data being sent to that client and a lot more queries being fired because every time you write one of those rows inside of this response, the whole response gets sent back down. Turns out I actually made things way worse for myself with another change that I had made. Something I care a lot about is really snappy navigation. I want you to, when you click a thread in the sidebar, have it immediately show the messages. The way I solved this is I had this function here where I would grab your top 20 threads and I would return my thread prefetcher for all of them. My thread prefetcher is just a use session query for the messages for that thread, and it returns null. This is a component that renders nothing, that exclusively exists to subscribe to the threads that you have in your sidebar there. I could do some fancy stuff with hover prefetching and all of that. I didn't want to. This ended up being the simplest, snappiest solution by far. But now we have 20 subscriptions to your top 20 threads. And we were migrating oldest to newest. So let's walk through what this now looks like for the client when the migration is going like this. Migrate all the attachments, nothing happens. Cool. Then we migrate threads. So we migrate 100 threads. Top 20 get subbed. So top 20 now create queries to get messages. And then another 100 threads come in. Now the top 20 changes. New 20 queries to get messages. This would happen until all your threads migrated. So every time a chunk of threads came in, 20 queries would fire and or update. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is when we moved to message chunks. Because if those message chunks, if any of them touched those top 20 threads, you had those top 20 thread listeners waiting, and all of the message writes would update some number of those. So the message chunking was firing hundreds of additional queries. So all of this was happening in the background as the migration was running. So you as the user weren't benefiting from any of this data being fetched. We were just subscribing to things we shouldn't have been yet, which caused absurd amounts of query traffic that we didn't need. Why did we not catch this before? How did we have this going that poorly and not notice? Remember earlier when I was talking about this auth issue? There were two parts of this. The first part was that subject like ID mismatching thing. The other part is that our cookies used to be HTTP only. And when the migration was running, it would still be an HTTP only, which meant that we couldn't use that cookie to connect to Convex. And I would update the auth after the migration was completed. So anything we were doing in the client that was dealing with subscriptions didn't matter because you weren't connecting to the client yet. You didn't connect until after the migration was done, where we would then update your authentication. As such, you never had to hit these queries in that case. But I fixed auth earlier because now I didn't have to trigger through my backend. Now I'm triggering by calling Convex directly. So I need auth fixed first. So I fixed auth, then I connect to Convex, then I trigger the thing, but now you're connected to Convex. So now we had these insane loads of just tons of queries updating that didn't need to, causing you to do a ton of traffic that you didn't benefit from, that just caused us to effectively DDoS the database layer in Convex. The correct solution for a lot of this would have been very simply to not render any of this until the migration was completed. I even added this here for that reason. But I also added this too, which we'll get to in a bit. But this line of code here, when I first pushed this 3 days ago, tricky, that one was different. Yeah, this one, when I pushed this, it reduced the load by between 40 and 70x. This one line of code where I don't prefetch if you haven't finished migrations. That one line change made everything go significantly smoother. And we were, for the most part, and at this point, for the most part, we were out of the woods. Things were smooth. The app felt great. I was really happy. I made a couple more changes before going to bed that night because I wanted optimistic updates to be better for people who aren't near the server so that when they made a change, they would see it in the UI faster. Ended up making it feel significantly better. I'd even say it's faster than T3 Chat was before when it was local first. Was very happy with where things were. And for the first time in a long time, I slept good. I straight up slept for like 12 hours. It was from like 10:30 p.m. till 10:30, maybe 11 a.m. the next day. I slept hard because I needed it after a month of getting all of this done. And I woke up to utter chaos. I woke up to so many DMs, so many support emails, so many tags, so many messages, so many replies on Twitter, so many Slack messages and threads. Between 6 and 8 a.m., things had started to really slow down. And from around 9 a.m. onwards, things were effectively down. We had mitigated pretty much everything we could at that point. And I would argue from here forward, there wasn't much we could have done to prevent the failures. But to be very, very clear, it does not mean we aren't responsible. We should have been able to recover much faster. And the fact that we didn't have a good enough paging system to wake me up earlier is a huge failure on my part, and we are going out of our way to fix that. So going forward, I can get these things fixed much faster. Ben, if you're listening, could you do me a favor? Find my white water bottle. It might be in my room and bring it up. I forgot to bring it. No rush. Anyways. This is where the problems got significantly more complex. We're going to start. I could tell you from my own words, but Convex actually went out of their way to make their own blog post detailing what went wrong here. Because our load was very interesting. Thank you, Ben. No rush. You can clearly see here 0 requests a second. Like, you can meme all you want that nobody uses T3 chat. Our traffic is not 0 requests a second. I have been impressed with how much traffic that we do. You want the link to the post here? I'll drop that in chat quick. So I want to start this point. The bugs we had up until this point with Convex on T3 chat were because the data throughput we were doing was insane. Yeah, thank you. It's the last minute stream, so I forgot to do all my prepping. Anyways, retake on that bit. Up until this point, the issues we had were, for the most part, code we wrote that was bad, causing either weird shapes for authentication data or queries and mutation throughput that was just absurd and unreasonable, especially at our size of product. Those were almost entirely our things to fix, not Convex's fault. There were even a few times where we were convinced it was Convex's fault. They went along with it for us to figure out it was actually us in the end. Wild set of experiences, but this was a very different outage. And we assumed with this one that this outage was caused by the same things because that was the case thus far. It was the queries and the mutations that caused the traffic, and the fact that, retake on that bit. The fact that we had so many problems with the mutation and query throughput kind of led us down the wrong path when we started having problems here. I love the wording here. Despite what Theo's discount code might lead you to believe, none of this was Theo's fault. It was Convex's fault. I don't like that. I think we all have things we can improve here. But this outage was like things that no one expected on either side to cause problems. We'll get to those in a bit, because as I said, our traffic should totally fit within what Convex can do, but there are quirks to our traffic that they were not prepared for. Speaking of discount codes, let me scroll. Jesus Christ, Twitter. Yeah. Speaking of discount codes, if you haven't subscribed to T3 chat yet, you can subscribe now with the code BLAMETHEO, and you'll get your first month for just $1. Only for new subs, and don't ask us for a refund on $1. Come on, guys. $1 for a full month when it's normally $8. Get access to all those models. It's a pretty good deal, I think. Give it a shot. Anyways. Vast majority of Convex is open source, so this is actually a really cool point. We can look at the diffs on Convex when they fixed these things and made these changes. Also funny, a bunch of people tried using the coupon code Theo to get a discount on Convex. Convex doesn't really do much in terms of discounts, and to be fair, it's really cheap. I don't know why they would, and their free tier is really generous too. They don't do discount codes, so there is no discount code for using Theo. So there's no discount code for Convex from me, but let them know that I sent you if you do try them out because of me, because they've been awesome. I was so skeptical of Convex for like 4 years, and I came around, and I can't imagine building stuff with my stack without it now. So here are the pieces that made our traffic weird. The first point is that we do a lot more text search than other high traffic Convex customers do. We have a search right there. People really like to use it. It's not in a great state right now because we turned off indexing on messages. So we're only searching based on thread titles right now, which I hate. We will fix this very soon once we are sure the traffic spike is something we can handle. But the search box was causing problems. But the bigger issue, and this is what none of us expected at the time, users frequently leave T3 chat open in a background tab, so it's there when they need to go check it. This was the problem, because a lot of people who weren't actively using T3 chat were still connected via the WebSocket connection. And despite our actual throughput being relatively low, the number of WebSocket connections we had was absurdly high. As people are saying in chat here, T3 chat's open all day for me. Same for me. I have a bunch of T3 chat tabs open at any given time. People, same, it's open 24/7. I do it on multiple devices. Yeah. Any given T3 chat user has a chance of having like 5 tabs open across different devices that all have an active connection to the WebSocket layer. Thankfully, and I'm very thankful this is the case, when you implement WebSockets correctly, a given WebSocket connection is actually really, really cheap. So theoretically, if we have a ton of these connections at any given time, it shouldn't actually matter too much in terms of the load on the Convex server. And as we've mentioned many times now, Convex manages all of the data back and forth on the client through the WebSocket. An important piece they have here is that as they've scaled up customers, they've slowly accumulated a vast list of knobs. These knobs are runtime customizable parameters that they can adjust on a case-by-case basis so that larger customers can scale smoothly. There are things like resources, cache sizes, limits on a given Convex deployment. And they literally link the Rust code for the backend. Yes, Convex is written in Rust for their crazy scalable WebSocket backend. And they link the code that shows all of these custom knobs that they have a configuration for so that they can change the performance characteristics for a given deployment when it needs it. And they had bumped a handful of things for us to make sure everything went smoothly. They did call out one more detail here. And as far as I know, this didn't end up being too big a problem. But their text search doesn't scale as aggressively as the rest of their stuff does. So for us, with a shitload of text data that needs to be searched against, they found some edges they're still working on fixing. And I'm sure it'll be fixed very soon. I haven't even bothered trying to turn it on to see what happens yet, but it should be good soon. The important piece is that we had made so many WebSocket connections because people would join T3 chat, open it up, and just leave it open. The number of WebSocket connections we had was just going up more and more over time and very rarely going down. It was a pretty consistent growth there. Around 6 a.m., one of the Convex on-call engineers noticed elevated error rates for some T3 chat users. The error subsided and load returned to normal, so the investigation was tabled until more engineers were online. It started to ramp up bad around 8 a.m., but by 9:30, the errors had returned significantly. With several engineers online, the team realized that a new limit within the code base was being hit as more T3 chat users were waking up and using the app. The number of pending subscriptions that needed to be refreshed. T3 chat was periodically having giant spikes of query invalidations and server function runs. With more users online, these jobs were starting to overflow a queue of waiting during spikes, which caused the server to drop WebSocket connections. So the pattern that happened here is that their text indexing would invalidate itself every 30 minutes. That would cause the queries to have their cache busted, which would then send an update down the WebSocket. But there would be a huge queue of those when that happened, which would occasionally cause the WebSocket connections to drop. We didn't understand why T3 chat was sporadically going from a steady state load of 50 QPS to 20,000 plus per second. But our first instinct was to turn this hard-coded queue size limit into a knob so we didn't cause all the clients to crash and reconnect. That would buy us some time. So the problem here was that the number of connections that could exist at a given time was hard-coded still. They hadn't made it a knob yet. So they changed that so they could configure it. And they bumped our limit from 10K to 100K. Then, around 10:15 a.m., they simulated the failure that we were having, and the engineer team noticed that the Convex client didn't back off when this particular failure occurred. This is probably the most important, and I would argue the most interesting detail of it all. They have, as you can guess, connecting to that Convex client and managing all the state on client is annoying, so they have a really nice JavaScript library that does it for you. It also manages the connection. The connection, when it fails, has a schedule reconnection function that does an exponential backoff so it doesn't DDoS the service when it is struggling to connect. The problem is it doesn't call that properly under certain cases. And the subscription worker full error that caused these failures was one of the ones where it wouldn't exponential backoff. It would just rapidly try to reconnect. So their client code wasn't backing off when the connection failed. And because of that, it was DDoSing their servers. So Convex's code in T3 chat was DDoSing Convex's WebSocket connection layer. They rushed out a change to fix this. Again, huge shout out to their team, especially Tom, who was making a bunch of changes on the JavaScript side in order for us to get this fixed. We shipped 2 custom clients out that they pushed to NPM just for us to get this underway. The problem was a lot of users were just waiting for the page to recover, or they had a background tab. We couldn't force refresh the user's client. You've all seen that little notification in the corner that's like, T3 chat has an update, click to refresh. That's all we could do. We couldn't force a client to update, which meant a lot of different clients were on an old version of this JavaScript package that was DDoSing their service. And we had to wait for more and more of those clients to be updated to have the new code that would back off more gracefully in hopes of reducing the connection load. Yeah. As they said, unfortunately, most of this load was coming from background tabs, and we had no mechanism to force a refresh on those tabs. So the old Convex code kept hammering the backend, which would overflow the queue, causing disconnections and reconnections yet again. Around 10:50, they had finally finished building and passing all the tests for their backend, which, funny enough, since their backend's in Rust, it's a lot harder to ship because the build times suck. Welcome to Rust. It's funny that Rust is going to fix our build time problems in JavaScript while having its own massive build time problems. Eventually, the backend is ready. They shipped it, and now they could increase the size of that queue, which seemed like it would solve all our problems. But another problem was introduced that we'll get to in a bit. From 11 to 12, the Thundering Herd just continued to overwhelm the T3 Chat Convex deployment. Couldn't figure out what was happening. We profiled the app. We found several optimization opportunities to speed up the Convex engine. I found a bunch on my end too. That's where this came from. If outage returned null, I went through and found all the heaviest things in the app that weren't necessary and disabled them, commented them out, blocked them, and did whatever I had to just make the app do less traffic. As people are saying in chat, they saw a whole bunch of update notifications right as the outage happened. And all of those were us changing the client bundle, shipping changes to try and reduce load, all these different things to do our best to recover. That's a really funny comment from what we were just talking about. Good thing to throw at us. Yeah. I'll be honest, at this point, I was thinking about once again rolling back to the legacy version, but no part of me wanted to go back to the old DB, the old index DB indexy setup, and have to have people lose their chests they did in the last 12 to 24 hours. I needed to make this work. And we felt like we were so close constantly. I was scared, but I knew we could do it, and having the whole Convex team up and working with us was a huge relief. Somebody asked, why not implement force reload? Because we couldn't implement different client code if the client was out of date. Even if we did add force reload then, we couldn't run it on old clients. We had no code on the user's device that could trigger a refresh. So we had no way to get these old tabs updated. We should have it now, and we'll probably do something in the future to make it more likely. But yeah. And thank you for this jolly coding, because I feel terrible about this outage. But both Claude and Twitter were down for more time last week. So I'm being too upfront, and if anything, this might actually look bad for us, because both Claude and Twitter are pretending their outages didn't happen, and people are forgetting about them. Most users probably didn't encounter the outage that I am describing because it was on a Sunday, which is our lowest traffic day. But I take this really seriously, and me talking about it so much will probably make our service look less stable than our competition, even though our uptime is comically better. But I'm not trying to rub it in. I'm trying to be transparent and as honest as I can be about what happened. Well, because I think it's interesting, and because I want you to know what we're doing to fix it so you can trust us going forward. I think that's much more important than pretending we don't go down. Anyways, they found some changes on their end to jitter and back off connections to try and lower this insane amount of load. But they still hadn't quite discovered the third problem. Here's where that was discovered. An engineer on our team noticed that while we were manually pushing out fixes to T3 Chat's Convex deployment during the outage, we accidentally placed the deployment back onto the default hardware resources used by free accounts. So the issue at this point was both the insane reconnection load, but also that we were on the free tier effectively because they were doing so much manual stuff pushing. It was just an honest, simple mistake. The problem was that their system that kept track of which provision a given instance was on was overridden by the custom deployments they were doing because it just didn't honor that setting. Honest mistake. I've made so many mistakes like this. It's hard to even put into words, especially for like account provisioning for like when we change someone's tier on ping. I cause bugs like this dozens of times a week. I don't hold this against them at all. I'm pumped they found it though, because like this is an annoying thing to find. They debated fixing it immediately, but it felt like the weaker hardware had almost gotten the site back online, so we delayed fixing that issue for a few more minutes to see if we can get everyone in sync before restarting the backend yet again. Because restarting would once again cause all those old clients to go back into DDoS mode. And if we can get enough of those old clients connected, they would stop DDoSing and the traffic would be much more reasonable. But then they saw it still just wasn't recovering fast enough, so they finally made the decision to redeploy on the much more powerful hardware that makes more sense for our service. And it was almost immediately recovered from that point. That was the timeline, but they did a much deeper root cause analysis. I've touched on a lot of this throughout. I want to break it down because they did a great job. The first piece was their search index compaction causing query invalidation. This is really funny because they sent me this graph where they showed spikes every 30-ish minutes that were just insane. And I was very confused about them because we didn't even see them in our dashboards. And James asked if we had a cron or a scheduled job or something that was running every hour or every 30 minutes that would have been causing this. I don't know how much you guys know about the stuff I build, but I avoid scheduled work to the best of my ability. A cron is a liability in 4 letters. The amount of problems I have had from old crons running that we forgot about is hard to put into words. I much prefer things to be driven by users, not by automation. Somebody asked if James was the on-call engineer. No, James is one of the founders. The founders of Convex were the ones in the trenches helping with a ton of this. James was the CTO and Jamie was the CEO, and they were both deep in this helping us. This wasn't like some random on-call engineer desperately trying to help us out. This was the core of Convex putting everything aside to make this work for us. And somebody just asked, should you close your background T3 job? No, do not. Keep T3 chat up and going. Do not change the way you use T3 chat based on what you learned today. T3 chat should work however you want to use it, and if it doesn't, tell me and we will fix it. We will continue finding all of these things and fixing them. Also, I love somebody hit the blocked word Jira. Yeah. So this one was funny because honestly, when you see a chart like this with 30-minute hits, it is any other customer, you would assume they have something on a cron job that's causing it. That is the reasonable assumption. I would have made the same assumption myself. We do not have a single cron job running for anything on T3 chat, so this couldn't have been us. And then, I love their wording here. We did what comes naturally, accuse the customer. I want to give Convex an absolutely absurd amount of credit here because I have come to them with so many things that I was 100% confident were things they did wrong. And of the 6 major ones where I did that, 5 were our fault and 1 was OpenAuth's fault. So of the 6, what the fuck are you doing Convex moments I had, all 6 weren't their fault. These guys really, really get databases and scaling. Even if it seems like this is a massive failure in scale, do you know who doesn't have those problems? PlanetScale. Do you know who the pickiest person I know is about database stuff? Sam Lambert, the CEO of PlanetScale. I introduced Sam to James and Jamie, and he said to me, I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this, I don't care. If I could possibly hire them, I would. It's rare I get to talk to people who don't work for PlanetScale that understand database scaling and characteristics as good as they do. It was a relief of a conversation to have. So if you're thinking of Convex as this like JavaScript bro database solution or like a Firebase alternative for small apps, you don't understand. Those guys scaled Dropbox and they built Convex on what they learned. They really get what they're doing. And right now, our Convex deployment is also based on MySQL. And there's a possibility in the future, they're in talks, they've had a back and forth public about it. I hope that happens, where there's a future where Convex is running on planet scale. So I'll once again be back on planet scale, as funny as that would be. We'll see if that happens. Fingers crossed. We'll see in the future. But they know how to scale. So do not think any of this implies that they don't know how to do scaling stuff. We just happen to have weird workloads that hit specific edge cases that they could immediately just turn up a knob and it handled the scale fine. So James made the dumb mistake of accusing us, not knowing I don't do crons. And this is something that I would expect from them, because I've accused them so many times of things that weren't their fault. And he wasn't even accused. It was curious if y'all have a cron. It was an honest question. They're poking fun, but yeah, this was totally reasonable and understandable. And you can see my sleep schedule showing off right here. Yesterday at 2:55 a.m. Also, them at 10 p.m. still trying to help us with debugging. Any luck figuring out what those spikes are? I'm curious, not seeing them ourselves on Axiom. Yep, we got them. It's a search index cache entry invalidation. We'll add this to the postmortem post and also prevent them from happening. Their search indexing was running compaction in order to keep the data size smaller for all the index fields, but it was updating every 30 minutes, which would invalidate subscriptions, which would cause a bunch of queries to fire. For those wondering what Axiom is, it is one of my favorite services. They were the first company to the first two companies to really pressure me into considering a sponsor deal were Upstash and Axiom, because both of them were super hyped on me and what I was doing when I had 1,000 subs on YouTube. Love those guys. And if you know my community, you know that they have taken a ton of people from here, including CJE, who is one of the core people for T3 app, including CJE is one of the core people for Create T3 app. Igor is one of my favorite designers ever, and Gabriel, who used to be my lead researcher and now is too busy running a bunch of engineering stuff at Axiom. Love those guys. Really, really good platform. And I'll be honest, I had not used it much since they redid the dashboard until these outages. Let me sign in quick because I want to just show it off. Cool. Here is their query builder UI. The big thing with Axiom is it just can handle horrifyingly large amounts of data. Like if you look at their pricing, you'll understand. Nice pop in, nerds. Switching to a browser that's more functioning. I didn't realize that open there still. Cool. Okay. You get 1,000 gigs of data for free. They will host a terabyte of log data in the free tier. Absurd. The level of data throughput you can put on these guys is actually fucking hilarious. Sorry. You can ingest 500 gigs of data per month for free. What? What? It's so insane. I have been very, very happy with Axiom as our log dump for everything, including all of Convex, because Convex actually has a integration with Axiom where you just click the little attach button and now all of our logs go straight to Axiom for us to do what we need to with. So here we're going to grab all of our executions where, not project name, project slug, where there is a data function path that exists. And now when I hit run, it's going to show me all of the queries that have run. But I want to do a bit more. I want to count based on the given function that's being called. So if I change this to data function path there, and I hide my screen in case there's PII in here, You motherfuckers. Guys, I bet it's a Firefox thing, like legitimately. Try it again. Convex, where data function path exists, summarize count by data function path. Hide this for PII reasons. No PII. And there we go. Now I can trivially, based on a given function path, create a graph to see what our traffic looks like at any given time. I can do last day. We can see spikes that occur throughout the day and all the different traffic for all the different functions. And as you can see, search gets hit like 1.7 million times a day. I thought I had nerfed that. I guess my nerf didn't go through. I'll have to go adjust that later. But get thread by ID gets hit 1.5 million times a day. You get the idea. We do a lot of traffic right now. This is such a nice way to visualize this data. It's such a good service for just logging everything. Axiom's cool. You should give them a shot if you haven't. They're not sponsoring me right now. I have turned it down over and over. I probably should. They're doing well. I should probably hit them back up. I really like them. It's been nice for that. But as I said, we did not see those queries in Conver. But as I was saying, we did not see the spikes that they were seeing when I went and checked inside of Axiom, which meant it had to be on their side. Somebody asked what the logging code looks like. What code? Let me get into my convex dash quick. Here's what it looks like. Let me make sure there's something here that you don't want to see. Here's what it looks like. You go to settings in Convex or Vercel or whatever else, and you connect to Axiom. Now there is no code, and all my logs just go to Axiom. It's very, very, very simple. No effort. That's part of why I like them so much. So that's how you get everything into Convex. So that's how you get everything from Axiom. That's how I got everything from Convex to Axiom. Sorry for the deep dive on all that stuff. People were asking questions, and I thought it might be useful to see how we actually monitor these things. It's like if Grafana or Datadog didn't cost billions of dollars and had an interface made by people who actually care. Yeah. Anyways, the problem that we were discussing first, the first of the 3 problems Convex listed, was that search indexing problem that was on their end. They didn't notice how often this was happening because Convex is really fast. So they didn't notice until the number of queries got bigger than the queue size, which caused the clients to go into these retry loops. Problem 2, the backoff logic. I talked about this before, but it was not nuanced enough. If it successfully makes a connection of any form, it would immediately reset the exponent to 0. The problem was it would connect, get an error, then disconnect, which meant that it would reconnect over and over again. Every time it managed to make a connection, it would be disconnected and then recreate it. So that exponential backoff wasn't applying because the exponent was being set to 0 over and over again. So it ended up causing a DDoS to their service. Yeah. As they said, if they had the backoff working, T3 chat probably would have gotten back to running properly again, even on the free tier, cheaper, lesser quality hardware. But that leads us to problem 3, which was that operational tooling did not enforce account-specific provisioning rules. So when they were in their ops dashboard for putting out this emergency, it didn't persist settings that they had set on my account, which were in this case, the settings to be on a more powerful box. As such, things fell over because it wasn't a powerful enough box to handle our traffic. The tool that they used to push code manually in their clusters during an outage didn't preserve the provisioned resources that they had applied before on the account. And they forgot to manually override it when they were hastily trying to fix it. This is a mistake that only happens when you are trying really hard to fix the thing, which is again why I will never ever fault them for it. They were trying so hard to fix the thing that they found 3 bugs in their system because they were trying to fix it that hard. You think you can keep annoying us during a video? Timeout, spotlight, bugs. You can come back in 10 minutes. You can't spam me in the middle of a video recording about an outage. You're lucky I'm not banning you. We spent more than an hour looking for complicated architectural reasons the T3 chat was down when the issue was actually the simple CPU overloaded because it was running on the wrong VM type. Yeah. Humans are allowed to make mistakes, especially under stress. So tooling needs to protect them from those mistakes. This is the part I really want to emphasize. I do not fault Convex at all for any of this. I will take as much fault as is possibly reasonable, specifically because we also didn't have good enough tooling, not just to prevent mistakes, but escalate the problem when we discovered it. None of that tooling was in place yet, and we are working hard to do it now. We're going to go through their follow-up actions, and then we're going to go through what we have planned on our side too. Convex's follow-up actions for the immediate are to make sure all tools honor codified hardware classes and resource assignments per deployment. So you don't have to worry which tool you're using internally at Convex. You know that the setup will always be honored. Optimize the search indexing compaction so it doesn't invalidate queries when no data actually changed. And ship a new client library with more comprehensive backup behavior. I think they already did this. Honestly, they probably did all 3 of these by now. These guys move fast. But going forward, they plan to do CPU optimizations for subscription engines so that the keys are stored rather than being computed at the read point, which will be a huge compute savings there. They also want to make new benchmarks and load tests around the DDoS case that we hit. Add server-side buffering and back off on Convex sessions so that the server can slow your connection down so you don't have to worry about the client causing the DDoS. And of course, add more configuration for dropping WebSockets from inactive tabs in the Convex client so that instead of us having to write some custom code so that the background tabs disconnect, they can automatically disconnect when they're seeing it run in the background and then reconnect when you open it back up. This was an awesome post. Huge shout out to Jamie for writing it and to James and Tom and everyone else at Convex that helped out throughout all of this. They've been essential not just for making the migration happen, but helping us debug things internally in the app, go through a deeper understanding of all the things Convex does and doesn't do. And now with an outage like this, I really felt like all hands were on deck to make this happen. There is nothing I would have asked for more from Convex throughout this. They took this more seriously than I ever could have expected or asked. And as you guys know about me, I might be a hard ass, but I am so incredibly forgiving. If you make an honest effort to fix something, I basically will never hold it against you. And they have made such a deep effort here that you should be more likely to use them seeing it, not less. Knowing they care this much about their customers, even small, in quotes, ones like us, should show the depth of how hard they work to make sure Convex is the right solution for everyone who uses it. So what can we do on the T3 chat side now? Well, the first thing we can do is fix fucking Twitter so I don't have to scroll back up every time I open this tab. But once Twitter's fixed, here was my breakdown. I posted this literally as we were recovering. We said we were live at 12:45. This post was 12:49. My goal was to be as transparent as possible with where we were at and what we knew at the time. I called out that we were pumped to finally have this migration done. We did it during the lowest traffic window. Everything seemed fine. I slept for 12 hours. The biggest piece that I called out here was that WebSocket connection DDoSing thing. But here are the things I plan to fix. The first big one is an actual status platform and update plan, as well as reporting in-app. Should we have a status page? Probably. But you should also know in-app what's going on. We should have a way that is separated from every other system to tell you inside of the app, hey, here's what went wrong today. Here's what's going on. Here's what you need to know. We're still figuring out where to put it in the UI. It's more a design problem than anything at this point, but we'll have a place in the UI to let you know, like, hey, some messages that are older than this time might have failed to migrate. Go to settings and click this button. Or, hey, we're mitigating an outage with Claude. Claude models are degraded right now. Or in this case, hey, everything's fucked. I'm sorry. We'll be back in a minute. We really want to do this. We'll have it very soon. Least we can do. Probably should have had this a month ago, but the way things were built didn't make a lot of sense. And also our outages, by the time we knew about it, we were halfway done fixing it usually. And it would take 5 minutes for us to fix half the time. Most of our outages, other than this outage, all of our outages have been less than 5 minutes. Status page doesn't help a whole lot for that. Point 2, we need a paging system. It's funny, I do actually have a paging system built, but it's a custom implemented thing I did for myself that I gave a couple community members access to so they can page me when a new model comes out so we can have it shipped immediately. But we don't have anything for an outage. And I was asleep cozy in bed for most of this outage. I don't like that. Not because like I'm the only one who could fix it. Clearly, like I did almost nothing here other than comment out some functions that cause a lot of load. I just want to be there to run comms and help the team when these things occur. And sadly, there was not a good way for my team or their team or anyone else to page me when things went wrong. I also want to have automated error detection, so I'll get paged if error rates go up too. We're finding better places to sneak all of that in. The biggest problem there, funny enough, is that most of our users use ad blocks. And since our service is now popular enough, whenever I pick an endpoint to send things like analytics data or errors from Sentry to, the ad block lunatics will block those analytics endpoints and those product feedback endpoints that we use to know when errors are occurring. I can't tell you how many times a user said they had an error. I went to the logs. I'm like, we have no logs of that. I asked them if they have an ad blocker and they're running Brave. Every fucking time. It's so annoying. I understand users wanting to protect their data. I do not understand blocking Sentry from sending logs because you have strong opinions or because you installed an ad blocker. It is not intuitive to a user that installing a tool to block ads means that the products you're using don't know when you encounter errors. Those don't line up in a normal person's head, and it really sucks because no matter what I do here, I don't feel like I'll have a good way of tracking client-side errors ever because so many of our users are on ad blocks. And you should be. Ad blocks make the internet more safe. But maybe if you're down, unblock our endpoints. Gabriel said, aren't the servers proxied? So this is a common thing. We're deep in the weeds. I can go deeper. Why not? Usually when you use something like, I don't know, let's use PostHog as the example. You have client, you have Vercel backend, you have PostHog, or Axiom, or Sentry, or whatever else there. Grab my lines. User does something on the back end. They get a response. Then the client errors for some reason. Something goes wrong on the client. They try to contact PostHog. But PostHog is hosted on like us.post, or I think it's us.i.posthog.com/event/whatever, and then like the event information. This URL is blocked by every fucking ad block in the world. Very annoying. So what most sites will do, and this is basically necessary nowadays, is you create a proxy on your own backend. So I send this to /API/event or something. And then this gets proxied to then go to us.i.posthog. So that the data, despite the ad blocker blocking it, they're blocking this URL. They're not blocking an endpoint on my service. The problem is, every time we change which one of these paths we're sending these events to on T3 chat, the new path gets set as a blocked URL in all of these block lists. So it doesn't matter whether or not us.i.posthog is blocked, because right now, t3.chat/API/event, this URL is currently blocked in every ad blocker. I want to die. I can change it again. I will continue to change it over and over. The other thing I could do is I could send this data down an endpoint that's used for other things. Like I could send it down to API chat, which is used for sending messages, and just have a custom flag on it for these other events and proxy those manually that way. But I don't want to change our architecture in those stupid ways because users are being that dumb. I really don't want to do that. I might have to in the future. How do they find out it's proxied? They open the network tab and they watch what traffic goes where, and they test blocking things on their client and see if T3 chat breaks or not. There's basically nothing we can do to prevent this, sadly. It used to work great to just proxy it to a different endpoint, but they'll block the endpoints now too. So our only option now is reuse the endpoint for other things and risk them still blocking it and then breaking T3 chat. So yeah, if people are asking, is this targeted? This is absolutely targeted. If you're popular enough, or the people who pay attention to you are involved in the ad block communities and don't like you very much, they will obsessively do this. The amount of time it takes from when I change this URL to it being blocked right now, it's about 24 to 72 hours, because these people are obsessive and insane. As such, I don't actually know when most of our users' devices hit an error because we don't get the fucking event. So yeah, that sucks. I'm going to put effort in to fix that because I want to know when things error. But thanks to ad blocks, it's basically impossible for me to know when a client-side error occurs. I can only know on the server. I obsessively log our server errors and I track them and make things change every day because of them. But I want to know when you're seeing an error so that I can be paged when enough users hit an error so I can wake up and go fix the thing. I'll have to put some crazy work in to make that happen thanks to blockers. Or I'll have to put a lot of work in thanks to ad blockers to make this happen, but I will. One other piece is something that came up in the Convex article. We need a way to have a refresh to latest flow on the client. So we can't rely on you clicking the refresh button if things are broken. I need a way to, in an emergency, force your client to disconnect or ideally refresh and get on the latest version. I also, very big deal, need to go through all of the providers that we currently rely on and make sure that they are prepared for the load and the load characteristics that we have, especially now because we are scaling like mad. T3 chat is still growing in ways I never could have expected. I never would have thought this service would be the thing that is not just like funding my company, but is now paying us back well enough that I can bring on an intern for the summer and like comfortably know the business will be here next year. It's unbelievable the amount of support that we have gotten with T3 chat, the amount of help we've gotten from the partners that we work with, the providers that we host with, and the users, each and every one of you, that both uses and supports us with the app, tells us when things are wrong, and also shares it with others, causing the service to just keep on expanding and growing. I am relatively confident now that I've done a pretty deep audit that everything we're using today will continue to scale for a very, very long time, but I need to keep a closer eye on this going forward to make sure nothing like this can happen again. I hate outages like this. We're taking this incredibly seriously. I've let my video schedule fall apart as a result of all of the work I've been putting into T3 chat. We went from 40 videos in the background. This another guy who's just spamming. Mods, time out anybody who's like repeating messages like that in a video. I love that. Scroll auto resetting. It's the coolest feature. Yeah. Retake on that bit. I've been working so hard on T3 chat that my video schedule's been falling apart. We had over 40 videos of backlog. We're down to 5-ish because I've been filming at most 3 videos a week lately and just focusing all in on this. I'm so happy to be doing it again, coding 10 hours a day, almost every day. I shipped a commit or a PR all but 2 days of last month. And I love it. And I love all of you for making this possible. And I hope that outages like this don't keep you from coming back. But I also understand if they do. We need reliable tools. We need things that we use like T3 chat to be there when we want them, to be there when we have questions, to be there when we need information. And every time it isn't, you're way less likely to come back. That all said, you can't use Claude either, so keep using T3 chat. I'm very happy with where we're at. I think our stability problem is more than solved here, and we'll be going out of our way to make it so fixing these things in the future takes minutes, not hours. No one is immune to outages. I hope that my language has never implied that we can't go down. And I hope the times I've complained about other services going down doesn't seem like I'm saying they go down and we don't. What I want is accountability and transparency. There was a couple people who tried to dunk on me with this, saying, you were just complaining about Twitter being down. No, I was complaining that Twitter had been down for 3 days, and all of the comms we had about it was a random reply Elon did blaming the server company for burning down. There was no accountability there at all. No ownership, no transparency, no nothing. The thing I care about is the ratio of severity of outage to severity of comms about the outage. We over-communicate small outages. They under-communicate massive ones. And I will always call companies out who make those mistakes because they are inexcusable. And considering the fact that I still can't load my Twitter feed right now, it's absurd to me. People make fun of our downtime. But at the same time, I am so thankful that we have enough users, enough people, literally tens of thousands every day, that use and rely on T3 chat, that tell us when these things happen so we can get on top of them faster, get these fixed more aggressively, and ship the best possible service to each and every one of you guys. I hope you understand how seriously we take these things. I hope you understand this isn't just a side project for some YouTuber anymore. This is a very legitimate application. It's a very real product for a very real company that I'm taking as seriously as I possibly can. I hope this helps restore some of that confidence and show you what our plans are going forward, or at the very least, you could learn some things about shipping at scale from what I've shared here. Let me know what y'all think. And until next time, stay up. Have not gotten to chat with the Super Maven guys just yet. I've been way too fucking busy. I hope to soon, but I just haven't been at anything that they are at. Just so disgustingly busy. I'll thank all the people who subbed and shit in a sec. I need to turn on the AC because I'm dying in here. I love how I plan to film 4 to 5 videos really quick before going to a thing at 5:30. It's now 5 o'clock and I filmed 1 video. AC is on. I should be much better in a minute. Anything that I can detect for a URL, they can detect as well is the problem. If I can parse that URL, know the UUID means that I need to go hit the service, they can do it too. There's basically nothing I can block, or there's basically nothing I can implement that they can't block other than to send the different data down the same pipe. The only option I have, yeah, it's this. I have to parse the request, not the URL. I have to have one endpoint that's like the megalith endpoint that does everything. And then treat that endpoint differently depending on what the shape of the request is. That's the best I can do. I'm not using middleware anywhere if I don't have to. I don't want yet another thing in between shit, but I might actually have to do that. The other thing I could do is abuse the next config even more. My favorite thing to do. Down here, since I have the app shell route to everything, it broke the TRPC endpoint because it has different chunks that it can route to for its path segments. So I have a custom header to detect that it isn't normal traffic and send it to TRPC instead, so it skips this catch-all in those cases. I am using React Router, but I'm using React Router and Next. This is how I make React Router work in Next, and it sucks. Haven't been able to touch the job board stuff. I have some plans there. There will be more soon. I'll probably do another call out and send out the survey thing once again in the future. We got a bit though. I'm sure this is cropped to be not a full backend rewrite, but rewriting the traffic like top level or something. I'll check later. I don't want, if I do this, I don't think you guys understand how mentally ill the sponsor block and ad block people are. I say this like I've contributed to uBlock in the past. It's an incredibly important service. It needs to exist to keep the web safe. I'm not against the existence of these things. I think they are good, especially like uBlock in particular. I'm scared to browse the web without it. That said, the fact that it also aggressively blocks anything even vaguely looking like analytics is a disaster. But the optics of me yelling at users if they hit an ad block case, but the optics of me removing users with ad blocks on or preventing them from accessing the site when we don't even have ads, the screenshot on Twitter of, wow, Theo's so greedy, he won't let me use T3 chat without an ad block. We don't want to deal with that shit. We really don't want to. And yes, the uBlock filter list does include my event endpoint. And whenever I change it, it gets updated within 72 hours. There is no single header that lets me pass users at random routes to fetch the right HTML page. There is no one header that is guaranteed all clients ever will have. Believe me, I wish there was. So I do the opposite. I have to, by default, route all traffic to static app shell, unless there is a static path for it, or it has a header that means it's actually an API call. Those are my only options. Also, obligatory never just.net. If you think something could be simpler, don't assume you know better than the person who did it, especially if they're an industry leading expert in the thing. Ask them if they tried it, and if so, why they couldn't do it. Instead of implying it could just be that simple, it can't be. Ask why not. There we go, Gabriel. Just delete the front end. Perfect. That's the best solution. Oh shit, thanks Chesk for the gift bomb there. Really appreciate that. Let me thank all the YouTubers who funded throughout that. RP, I hope I answered this question. Thank you for the throwing $5 there, as well as Gabriel joined the D3 Club over on YouTube. Appreciate all of you a ton. And over here on YouTube, we got Chesk with the 5 bomb. Thank you so much for that. What else did we miss while I was filming? I got you off with the 23 months. Appreciate that a ton. Tramp out again with the 27 bomb, hitting the 69 total. Ben Dev, 12 months in. James 007 with the prime. Sam here with the prime as well. CD Villard, the legend, 2-year mark. Thank you for hanging out. Tramp Boat, 6 months, tier 3, legend. Almost, or over a year now of tier 3 club. Eva, I didn't see you showed up. Fuck yes. Fun things pretty soon. Oh no. I am scared. I am quite scared. Resubbed for 9 months, 14 months now. Jeez, you've been around forever. Always good to see you. I hope all's well. Catch up soon. The Nightmare 965 with the Prime, 8 months in. Legend. Voxel hitting that 1 year now. Not storing data in CSVs and backing it up with a cron job. Look, man. Slykoff with the Prime. Lermatroid over 2 years with the Prime now. Furman underscore 3 months in on the Primes. XCSS 3 months in as well. Akko Rune hitting the 10 month right on that 1 year mark. Gene here with the 3 months, Moogie with the tier 1, Jordan Fails with the 5 months, TJRGG, great name, with the 3 months, Jacob, the fucking legend, 31 months in now. Always good to see you, man. Hope all is well. Vex here at the 3 months, XHT negative, over 2 years now, getting close to 3. Jesus Christ. Ad Joker 97 with the prime, Cactus Gons. Is this I hope this is a Mark Gonzalez reference. If not, totally fine, but always good to see you, Gons, in chat. Thanks for the Prime. Spotlight, apologize for annoying me. Thanks for the bits. No worries, man. Yeah, sorry I couldn't answer the question earlier. We have the keys in for people who want to have larger context windows or not hit limits, or just want it on their cluster and not on ours. It was easy to implement. We will likely be making our 2.5 Pro a premium model in the future, so that's to help mitigate that when it happens too. It's there if you want to do it. Test with the 5 bomb. Gonsi with the raid. Legend. Haven't seen you in a minute, man. Hope all is well. Will you be at the office for the thing I'm doing there? I think it's next week. We don't have the larger context windows on BYOK yet, but that will be a thing in the future for sure. You won't be? Oh, no worries. Hope all is well, man. Good to see you. We're going to be doing a lot for higher tiers, as well as like re-upping when you run out of stuff. I'm curious, Eve, are you running out of the 1500 or are you running out of the 100? Builder.io? $1,200 a normal month? Damn. This is Gabriel's favorite thing to give me shit for. I don't speak Spanish, but he loves to trick people into thinking I do, so they talk to me in Spanish. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, I'm sorry. I was getting distracted by everybody. Thank you, NMG, for hitting right on that 2-year mark line. Yeah, DM me next week. I should be ending stream in 20 minutes. I'll go a bit longer because we really need to catch up on videos. But I have no time until next week. Artem, thank you for the bits. Really appreciate the cheer. I hate that hack and no one should do it. Every time I talk about it, I try to talk about it with a clear call out, like, do not do this. Oh shit. Builder AI is not AI, it's 700 Indian dev. That is actually hilarious. X is usually best. Like, Discord DMs are too hidden. And then Toby with the Prime for 2 months. Appreciate that as well. Cool. We've gotten through all that. Let's update Notion. I really want to read this blog post. I started reading it before and had to stop because I knew it had to be a video. Oh, they went belly up because of that? Good to know. Okay. This looks like it has to be a video as well. Thank you, guys. I want to do this first because I'm actually really excited about this one. I can close all those. I have links. Cool. $250 billion round. Oh, God, this is going to be a fun one. My AI skeptic friends are insane. Yeah, convex will be my default going forward. Anyways. Let's dive into this. Then I'm definitely talking about the builder AI thing because that's nuts. Is there a dark mode on the blog? I don't think they have a dark mode. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, they don't seem to. I'm not installing Dark Reader. I hate that extension so much. Anyways. God. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've kind of become an AI bro. I never thought I would see the day. You know my old videos. I was one of the biggest skeptics of all this stuff. I just didn't really see the value. Hell, when I first tried Copilot, it annoyed me because it was overriding the TypeScript autocomplete that I thought was more accurate and reliable. That's changed massively over time. From From falling in love with Cursor and the power of their tab autocomplete, as well as Command I, Command K, and all the other cool things you can do, to building T3 chat and seeing how useful these new agents and models can be, to all the stuff that I talk about here on the channel, AI has really changed how I think about things and, more importantly, how I build things. And now, when I have conversations with my friends, many of whom are still skeptics of AI, I almost feel a bit insane. It's just like, I was right there with you. I saw these things. They didn't feel like that big a deal, and I tried them, and they weren't that big a deal, and I moved on. And then I gave it a more serious go when the tools got better, and now it's so clear the future is very different than we previously thought. I'm not saying AI is going to come in and replace everything. I'm just saying it will meaningfully adjust the work that we do as developers in a way that we should talk about. This is a thing I've been feeling for a while. So when I saw this article pop up on Hacker News a few days ago, I really wanted to talk about it. I started reading it, immediately realized I had to share it with you guys. So now we're doing a video. This article was posted on Fly.io. This article was posted on the Fly.io blog. I love Fly, one of my favorite ways to deploy servers. That said, they are not sponsoring this video in any way, shape, or form. We do have bills to pay, though. So a quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive into why all my AI skeptic friends are insane. Let's dive in. Before we go too far, I want to shout out Thomas for writing this. There were a couple people who were flaming him for this article. That's actually part of why I saw it. They are mad because he's a very well-respected person in the data world, but he is now coming around to AI. And a lot of data people, funny enough, are anti-AI, so they've been mean to him about it. I'm thankful they were, though, because it made it so I saw the post and immediately started falling in love with it and wanted to share these points with you guys. So let's dive in. A heartfelt provocation about AI-assisted programming. Tech execs are mandating LLM adoption. That's bad strategy, but I get where they're coming from. This is something I've been seeing more and more of, like companies say, like, we need all teams to introduce agents to their workloads. Yeah. Some of the smartest people I know share a bone-deep belief that AI is a fad. It's the next iteration of NFT mania. I've been reluctant to push back on them because, well, they're smarter than me, but their arguments are unserious and they're worth confronting. Extraordinarily talented people are doing work that LLMs already do out of spite. I very much agree here. I am absolutely going to have to Excalibur for this one, so we're going to open it and get started quick. That was the first point I wanted to make here. Oh, yeah. I want to talk about the mania bit first and foremost because it's very real. I don't know how many of y'all were around or online for the Web3 thing. We're going to go a bit further back to the GraphQL bubble. This one isn't talked about a whole lot because it doesn't seem like it was that big a deal. But in the moment, it was very real. GraphQL was an alternative way for us to think about how we structured our APIs and access data from different devices and clients, usually user-side clients. So if you had a complex application like Facebook and you wanted really complex relations in it, like you had a post that had comments, that had commenters, and the commenters had their own relations of like, are they a friend with you or not, and all of these different pieces, a traditional REST endpoint is very ill-flexible and doesn't do a great job of exposing the data in a way the client would benefit from. And GraphQL was built at Facebook to make it easier to define your APIs as a graph and then access that data in your clients so that the client could figure out what data it needed without having to define new endpoints every time they wanted to change the UI slightly. And it was revolutionary for companies that had thousands of engineers and really complex graph data problems. It became so ubiquitous that it was basically the standard for how applications were built for a few years. And out of that, a bunch of different startups happened, including things like Gatsby, which was GraphQL for blogs. I shit you not. It was really a static site builder for React, but what it effectively was in implementation is a GraphQL API for defining static pages. Nonsense. What was the... Those have been around for a while. Don't include this quote in the video. What's the annoying GraphQL company that had beef with me that claimed we were copying them with upload thing? Yeah. Yeah, GraphQL I'll definitely include. Let me see if I can... It wasn't Apollo. I like Apollo. This was so long ago. It's going to take forever for me to find... Fuck, what's the name of the company? It wasn't Stellate or GraphCD, and I actually like those guys. Fuck, what was it? Okay, I'm searching for specific phrasing I remember having in my response. Wondergraph. That's who it was. Thank you, guys. Cool. So you had Gatsby for your blogs. You had GraphCool, which was a database to GraphQL tool to like turn your existing database into a GraphQL endpoint. They eventually became Prisma. And that's also why Prisma was so slow for a while, because it was still GraphQL internally. We had Wondergraph. I still can't really describe what they do, and I doubt they can either. They call it GraphQL Module Federation, so you can split your GraphQL stuff across different things. Seems like a problem for 5 companies that would be pretty legit for those 5 companies. There was Asura, which I hated. I have my whole diagram, like GraphQL goes here, not here, where people are trying to put it in front of their databases. There were so many of these. There was just this huge window of GraphQL focused startups because it seemed like we were moving off of traditional APIs into GraphQL. So there would need to be so we would need the Postgres of GraphQL. We would need the AWS of GraphQL. We would need the Datadog of GraphQL. We would need all of these different things for the GraphQL world. But it turned out GraphQL was only actually useful to a very, very small subset of the world. These really big Fortune 50 companies that had these complex data architectures. As such, the best case for most of these companies is they could have like 20 customers. There was no world where these should have been VC funded and should have been as huge as they were. If you were around for any of these bubbles, be it the GraphQL one, the Web3 one, or if you have been around for any of these bubbles, GraphQL, Web3, NFTs, even like the old .com bubble back in the day, where this thing was so much better than what we were used to or had so much potential that we way overreacted and pretended everyone would be using this thing in the future, you'll be inherently skeptical. And I was bit by this too. I was in Y Combinator during the NFT wave, and a ton of the companies in our batch were all doing weird Web3 stuff. I knew 4 different companies in our batch, or not my batch. I knew 4 different companies that were doing auth for Web3, and I only knew one company that would be a potential consumer for auth for Web3. They were inventing things no one needed for products that didn't exist. It was so common. And if you've been around for these different bubbles, you're going to be skeptical of anything that smells like one. So the fact that I can name 10 companies that are doing agents as a service for writing the code and hosting the agents for you, which is effectively just a basic, or all of which are just doing something you could do yourself on Cloudflare relatively easily. I'm not saying Vercel is a bad business. I'm saying having 50 Vercels would be a bad thing. And the fact that we have hundreds of these companies all doing the same thing for a market that's barely started shows that there is a bubble here for sure. And if you immediately treat the whole thing as bad when you see a bubble, I understand. If you saw this GraphQL bubble and said, you know what, I'm going to avoid GraphQL entirely because this seems like a hype machine that isn't doing anything, I would understand. The problem is AI is actually really fucking useful. So despite the fact that it is a hype bubble, there is real value. If you were to graph this to be you have value as a chart and you have hype as another bar. How much are people talking about it? How much are people making companies about it? Your hype to value ratio. I would say GraphQL was something like this. The value, it was there for really big companies, but not that much. And the hype relative was huge. This was destined for failure right when it happened. There was no world in which the low value prop of GraphQL would ever be worth the amount of companies and time and money being spent creating all of that product. So for GraphQL, these numbers were bad. Some other things. How about Web3? I'll wrap NFTs into this. It's hard to measure the value of Web3 stuff relative to GraphQL. I'm going to be controversial and put it slightly higher because I still conceptually really like Bitcoin. I think the idea of a currency that is mathematically proven and not regulated by a government is really cool and awesome. And if I was to have held all my Bitcoin instead of spending it like a currency, I wouldn't be a YouTuber. I'd be a billionaire living in the middle of nowhere. But I would spend my Bitcoin because I liked it as a currency. When it stopped being a currency and started being a thing you would hold and trade and put crappy JPEGs into, it all fell apart really fast. So I'm probably going to have to change the scale of things here because the titles are too low. The Web3 hype was absurd. Even if the value was slightly higher, the hype was to a level that was unfathomable and obviously very, very bad and could never live up to what people wanted. There are cases that make crypto cool, like stable coins for people outside of the US and whatnot, but nothing compared to the hype machine that I saw in the funding rounds that I watched happen. It was a shit show. So what about AI? Deleting that for now because we aren't there just yet. Here's the problem. AI is at least as valuable as we pretended Web3 was. And if the hype levels were the same as they were for Web3, I would actually say it's reasonable for how useful this stuff is. Unlike NFTs, my mom actually uses AI to ask questions and answer things for her. NFTs being a feature on Twitter was cringe and dumb. AI giving you better answers on Google search is actually kind of useful. So I think by the end of next year, most people will encounter, I would argue that by the end of next year, most internet users will use AI in a meaningful way at some point on the average day. Unlike Web3 and NFTs, which most people will never encounter at any point. But this is the problem. Because AI is actually useful, the hype has gone beyond what my chart can possibly represent. So if you are judging these things based on how absurd the size of the hype is, you're going to miss out, because previous hype bubbles being way bigger than the value that was added was bad. This was terrible. The problem is we finally have something that's actually really valuable that's coming out of these places. But since the hype machine's gone way beyond belief, many people are treating it the same way they treated things before. And that sucks. And that's what I want to be here to try and do, is I want to both make fun of the people claiming they have 12 agents writing all their code for them, but also point out that tab completing cursor will make you much more effective at your job in using things to give your editor more context on the work you're doing, and maybe the occasional background agent with something like Devin or Codex to work on something in the background while you're doing something else. These things can actually make us more effective as engineers. A lot of the work we do is tedious and boring. This can make a lot of the tedious and boring work go away. Or you can keep doing it out of spite, which is what the article said. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of fun as we go deeper in this. This is a bold statement from the author. All progress on LLMs could halt today, and LLMs would still remain the second most important thing to happen over the course of my career. Bold ass statement. I like this caveat though, because I think this is really important. He's only discussing the implications of LLMs for developers. For art, music, and writing, honestly, even I am the same place here. I don't know what the impact in those fields is going to be. I am disappointed that people like AI music at all, because whenever I hear it, it's just the cringiest, most stupid shit. Using AI to do some cool things in music is fun, like using it to redub a voice or rip a vocal track out of an old song so you can use it for something else. Like the same way Copilot can assist us in development, I am excited to see art tools with AI assistance like that, but we're not even close to there yet overall. It'll be interesting to see where that all goes, but this is not meant to be a discussion of how AI changes the arts. This is a discussion of how AI changes our lives as developers. The author qualifies himself a bit here. They've been shipping software since the 1990s. I was born mid-1990s, so I am much less qualified than they are in that regard. He started out in a boxed, shrink-wrapped C code base, survived an ill-advised C++ phase, lots of Ruby and Python tooling, some kernel work, a whole lot of server-side C, Go, and Rust. However you define serious developer, he qualifies, even if only on one of the lower tiers. Sounds like a pretty high-tier dev for me, especially if they're at Fly.io right now. That team is cracked. He knows his stuff. This is not a random person who's vibe coding their way through life, who just learned how to code a year ago and doesn't even have a degree. This is someone who's been doing this shit for longer than most of y'all have been alive, myself included. Yeah, some kernel work, it says a lot. Like, what? Yeah. Level setting. First, we need to get on the same page. If you were trying and failing to use an LLM for code 6 months ago, you're not doing what most serious LLM-assisted developers are doing right now. There's also a call out here of, God forbid you were using Copilot 2 years ago, because that was not representative of what AI was capable of. This is even crazy to me. Like, just a few days ago when I was working on the Stitchbench stuff, I would say the first pass on it was 50-50 between me and Claude 4 / tab complete / all the other AI stuff for just the script that ran all of the chats. The second part, which was the using Gemini to analyze all of those scripts, that file is 500 lines on the dot. I did not write a single line of code in this file. This entire file was written by Command I, the generator thing here. This was agentically written by me giving a basic description of what I wanted it to do, and it made it work first try. It even wrote the system prompt for me. I wrote none of this code. That is crazy. The fact that I wrote a giant file in a code base that I actually kind of cared about. I wanted this to be a good representation of how to run these types of tests. That's insane. The fact that it could pass my bar, run correctly. I could have written this myself, and I started writing things like it before. Do you know how useful that is? That I could have this generating in the background while I was responding to tickets with T3 chat, because we were in the middle of the migration stuff while I was doing this. It's so cool. And it's not just cool, it's very real and practical. And this file isn't a file that's like super critical and important to things that are running in production. If it was, I would have at the very least reviewed it thoroughly. This is a script that I'm running locally. Things that wouldn't have been worth doing before suddenly are, because 500 lines of throwaway code went from an annoying weekend project to a single prompt. That's nuts. That's insane. And it couldn't do that 6 months ago even. I tried. I was very amused at how bad these things were at that stuff. We're in a different world now. People coding with LLMs today are using agents. Agents get to poke around at your code base on their own. They author files directly. They run tools. They compile code, run tests, and iterate on the result. They can also pull arbitrary code from the tree or from other trees online into their context windows. They can run standard Unix tools to navigate the tree and extract information. They can interact with Git. They can run existing tools like linters, formatters, model checkers, and most importantly, they can make essentially arbitrary tool calls that you set up through MCP. This is the pill I have not taken just yet. I did just set up my first ever MCP inside of Cursor. MCP tools. I added context 7 because it seems really useful for getting docs for different libraries and things automatically. I'm excited to see how it behaves when I want better docs for a thing. It's made by Josh Tried Code and some of the other guys over at Upstash, and I'm very excited to see how it benefits, but I haven't had a chance to write any code since I added it because I've been so disgustingly busy. I will say that the word agent is still way too vague and doesn't describe any specific thing. The concept is AI that is running autonomously and doing things, but it is effectively AI with tool calls doing more than one request. That's how I choose to think about it and explain it to people, is instead of you give a request and it generates text as a response, it's now you give it a prompt and it will call itself, it will call tools, it will run multiple things, it will do multiple steps, it will do more than one thing to get the stuff done. I like that framing from chat, actually, from Dogpaw Hat. Agents are models calling tools in a loop. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The code in an agent that actually does stuff with code is not itself AI. This is another important piece that people don't seem to get. It's not like it is hallucinating how you have things implemented in your code base. It's calling a tool that is real code that is used to access files in the code base. So when it wants to know what files use a function, it's using a tool that uses TypeScript. It's calling a tool that uses TypeScript's IntelliSense to find where the references are, or it might just be calling a grep call across your code base for all the things that match that shape and find all the files that are relevant. But it's using real code that is being triggered by the LLM using a tool call shape. I discussed that in depth in my safety video. If you haven't watched that, I put way too much work and I highly recommend it. One of my best videos, in my opinion. The tool calls are real code humans wrote to make the AI more effective. It's not that the AI magically learned how to keep track of every file in your code base. The AI has the tools to access the right files, the same way we do as humans. The same way we will Command-Shift-F to find the thing we're looking for, or use grep in our terminal, or go to the docs to read to find the thing we're looking for. AI now has code that was written by a human to allow the AI to go do those things. And the code that does that is also hilariously simple. It's wired to ground truth about programming in the same way that a makefile is. You could write an effective code agent in a weekend. Its strengths would have more to do with how you think about and structure builds in linting and test harnessing than with how advanced O3 or Sonnet have become. Yeah, a lot of the improvement has been since Claude 3.5, the tools we build and give the LLMs access to are better, because 3.5 was way better at calling those tools. We were suddenly incentivized to make them better. But the biggest model groundbreaking thing in the tool calling and all this we're talking about today was 3.5, because Claude 3.5 unlocked all of this stuff and gave us incentives to build better tools. But you could go back to the old model and still have a much better experience in Cursor than you did a year ago, just because the tools they built for it to have access to have gotten so much better. Yeah. Another call out. Making a request on a ChatGPT page or T3 chat, love you guys, and then pasting the results, the broken code you get into your editor, you're not doing what the AI boosters are doing. And it's no wonder that you're talking past each other. If you see these people saying AI's changed how they work, they're using Claude and Cursor and ChatGPT and all these things to make themselves way more effective as engineers, then you go to ChatGPT or T3 chat and you're like, hey, implement this for me. And it gives you a bunch of code that doesn't work for your setup at all. And you go try it and it's broken. And you're like, wow, why does anyone care? I understand why you think this sucks. But the fact that some people are using all of these tools in Cursor with MCPs, doing docs calls, and you're just writing a quick query on ChatGPT, you're not doing the same thing. You're talking about it like you are, and the conversation isn't happening. And I really like this call out because I think it's really important. This is a piece I missed myself. I was doing things the simple way. And the more I've been using the depth of it, the more impressed I've been with what you can do with it. I love this chart. This chart, as soon as I saw it in the article, it got burned so deeply in my brain that I almost used it in another conversation about entirely unrelated stuff today. This is the quadrant of things based on importance and fun. There are things that are fun and important. There are things that are tedious and important. There are things that are fun and pointless, and tedious and pointless. I would argue my snitch bench benchmark falls squarely in fun but pointless. But there was also parts of that were tedious, that were blocking the fun parts. But then there's work that's actually really fun, like changing our sync engine to T3, and then there's work that's actually fun and important, like changing the sync engine on T3 chat over the convex. I wrote a lot of that code, almost the vast majority of it, certainly, myself. That was like a 10,000 line change. That was a shitload of work. But then there was a tedious thing where I had to change how we were wrapping wait until calls, and an AI agent could go do all of that for me. I really like this framing. Ideally, we spend our time in this top right quadrant doing the fun, important things. And if we can get the tedious stuff out of the way, life gets a lot better. LLMs can write a large fraction of all the tedious code you'll ever need to write. And most code on most projects is tedious. LLMs drastically reduce the number of things you'll ever need to Google. They'll look things up themselves. Most importantly, they don't get tired. They're immune to inertia. I can't tell you how many mistakes I made because I was so deep on tedious changes. And 5 hours in, I'm just being lazy about it and writing slop, absolute garbage code. The agent's quality doesn't go up or down depending on how late in the day it is. That's a huge thing. Think of everything you've ever wanted to build but didn't. You tried to hone in on some first step. If you've been in the limerent phase of a new programming language, if you'd been in the limerent phase of a new programming language, you'd have started writing. We've all been there, where you have a new language we're falling in love with, and we have the side project idea, and we dive in just because we like the programming language so much, or we want to learn it more. But if you weren't, you put it off, and it slowly gets pushed back until it never happens. I have a long list of those projects still myself. I can feel my blood pressure rising, thinking of all the bookkeeping and Googling and dependency drama of a new project. This part I can't relate to. This is part of the fun part for me. I like the scaffolding and getting all the parts together right. It's just how I am. But other people hate it, which is why things like Create 3 App did so well, because people just want to get started on the thing, knowing the stack is good enough. LLMs can be instructed to just figure that all out for you. Often, it will drop you precisely at that golden moment where shit almost works. And development means tweaking code and immediately seeing things work better. That dopamine hit is why I code. I have a silly example of that in my index file for the LLM benchmark. This LLM benchmark runs by taking 4 markdown files and doing the first one, then the second, and the third, and the fourth to a model, getting a response, and creating a fake message chain with that given model. So I have all the way up here somewhere these 4 prompts. I read these all from the markdown file. This whole function written by Claude. Deleted accidentally. This function grabs all the files from the directory, filters them, sorts them, outputs them. Initially, they weren't coming in the right order. It was coming in 4, 3, 2, 1. So I told Claude, go sort it by date. Or not by date, but by the number in the file name. So it did. And it was still coming in 4, 3, 2, 1. Turns out in this case, it was actually my bad code. I had input message.pop instead of .shift. But the moment where I realized that and fixed it and then ran it and it worked, that's why we do this. The feeling of having a giant pile of code doing this absurd thing you shouldn't be doing, being so close to it working, it's not quite there, and then you find the piece and you fix it and it works and you smile. It's the same feeling I get when I land a really hard trick on a skateboard. It just feels good. And AI can make it way easier to get to that point. Because sometimes you even go over it and like make the thing just work for you. But the fact that they can drop you right there, right before the thing works, and you can still use your experience as an engineer to do that last piece, it feels so good. It really does. And I feel like I get more of those, oh shit, it works now moments than I used to. Because all the things that lead up to that moment can, for the most part, now be automated. Not all of them, but a large portion, a significant part of that work can now be done with these tools. For me, the problem is, or the concern I have is when people miss that and they expect the AI to fix it for them. The thing I always say is, rather than asking the AI to fix the bug, ask it about the bug or what might be causing the bug. But in this case, I just read the code because I had it fix the thing I thought was the bug. And as I was reading through, I noticed the mistake. But ideally, you're not relying on the AI to find everything that's wrong for you. You're relying on the AI to help you scaffold the environment where the thing can go wrong. And then you fix the thing inside of it. You know what? Let's do a test. It might be smart enough to know what the recent changes were. Cool. That's just a running backwards. So what might be causing that? Looking at your code, I can see the issue. It's a problem on line 210 where you're using pop. I could have just asked the model and it would have solved this for me. But I didn't because I wanted to solve it myself. But that's the fun part, the detective work to figure out what's wrong. And sometimes the AI will be wrong about it too, and that's fine. But like, all of this is so unbelievable to me that things like this are this good now is just crazy. There is a downside though. Sometimes gnarly stuff needs doing, but you don't want to do it. So you refactor unit tests, soothing yourself with the lie that you're doing real work. But an LLM can be told to go refactor all your unit tests. An agent can occupy itself for hours, putzing with your An agent can occupy itself for hours, putzing with your tests in a VM, and come back later with a PR. If you listen to me, you'll know that. You'll feel worse yak shaving. You'll end up doing real work. This is one of the craziest things for me, is a lot of the stuff I would do, like fixing type errors and these different things, or cleaning up our weird test cases if we were doing more unit testing than we currently are. What's left when the AI is doing all that stuff is the real hard work. It's actually something I've talked a lot about with the Devon guys, where a lot of people who use Devon, which is the like AI agent that you tell, go fix this issue in Slack and it will go do it and put up a PR. We're not using it yet for T3 chat because things that we would trust it to do, like fixing our tests, are so easy to do now that we just do it in cursor ourselves. We just command I say, go do the thing, and it usually gets it right first try. We read it, we run it locally, we push it. We're probably at the point where we could start doing it with Devon, but now it's saving us 10 minutes of work instead of the 4 hours that it would have been doing it all yourself before. And you would have felt really good doing that work. So it's important keeping the code base pristine. No, it's not. It is, but it's not. And now these tools make it easier for us to generate the busy work instead of doing it to feel busy. This is going to be the real risk with jobs too. I don't think a bunch of people will be fired because they're doing nothing but maintaining unit tests and now AI is fixing it for them. But I do think teams are less likely to hire if the average employee can do way more work. And now everyone's favorite counter. You have no idea what the code actually is. I did not expect to be called out here. Are you a vibe coding YouTuber? Can you not read code? If so, astute point. Otherwise, what the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, I love this author. I love this so much. You've always been responsible for what you merged to main. You were 5 years ago, and you are tomorrow, whether or not you're using an LLM. If you build something with an LLM that people will depend on, read the code. In fact, you'll probably do more than that. You'll spend 5 to 10 minutes knocking it back into your own style. LLMs are showing signs of adapting to local idioms, but we're still not there. I can't tell you how many times I have had code spit out in these agents and it's just not pretty or formatted or does weird things I don't like with casing and naming variables and too many comments and all that. I usually will go clean it all up. I did, and to go back to this code base, for example, the index file, which is the actual thing that runs most of the stuff, I combed over this a lot. Analyze snitching, I didn't write a single line in. This is their style. I did prettier format it when it was done, but I didn't write a line of this fucking code. If I wanted to make changes to it, I'd probably go fix it first. There are people who are anti-code review, and I've always found them insane. But I will say, if you're anti-code review, if you think everyone on your team should just be able to merge to main without anyone looking at the changes, don't use AI. I don't want you to be more effective at your job. I want you to keep suffering in silence in your corner with no users. Those people are absurd. They show up in my replies all of the time when I talk about code review culture stuff because I think code review is incredibly important. It is essential to how everything I do ever in my career has run. And even like Uncle Bob says it's silly and dumb. And I think those people are mad. All of that aside, review your code, whether a coworker made it, you made it, or an LLM made it. Code review is important. You should do it. People complain about LLM generated code being probabilistic. Read on that so I can try and pronounce it right. People complain about LLM generated code being probabilistic. I'll never pronounce that right. Just go with it. It's based on probabilities. It isn't. It's code. It's not YAC output. It's knowable. The LLM might be stochastic, but the LLM itself does not matter. What matters is whether you can make sense of the result and whether your guardrails hold. Massive. This means more than ever, things like TypeScript and good type definitions are important because if the LLM generates code that doesn't match your type defs, you know the code's less likely to be right, and you're probably going to try and figure it out and fix it. I will also admit, as much as I don't like to, unit testing and test-driven development might make more sense than it used to as well. Because if you have a test that you've read a small 10-line of code thing and say, yes, if this input goes in, and this input, and I hate to admit it, but if you have a 10-line of code test with a basic input and output, and you're confident that if that passes, the code is right, that is really useful for these agents, especially if they can run the test and see if the output's right or not, and then rerun again if they change the code when it's not. Yeah. More on this. Someone called out how nice it is to use TanStack Start and TanStack Router, which are still very new TypeScript experiences, just tabbing away in Cursor or whatever IDE you're using. How are LLMs so good at it while it's still quite new? It's because it's designed with types in TypeScript. That's huge. The fact that the type definitions are all inferred top to bottom and give you this information in the IntelliSense like system in your editor means the AI agents can see it and use it while they do the work, and the output is more likely to be correct. Or at the very least, you can see when it's wrong and go make the change. You should have systems to identify when these things are breaking in your code. If you don't, fix that first. And once you fix that, go try the AI tools again because you might be surprised. If I was living in a vanilla JS jQuery code base with weird bindings to and from everything, I would not be comfortable command eyeing and telling Cursor or whatever other tool to go write a bunch of code because it might just not work and it'll be much harder to notice. But if you have decent tests, or better, you have really good types, those guardrails will be a very useful thing to know if that code is or isn't functioning. Reading other people's code is part of the job. I would argue you should be reading more code than you're writing on average. The fact that that isn't the case terrifies me because it means inherently the majority of code isn't reviewed. If you are not reading more code than you are writing in a given day, and all of your coworkers are in the same boat, that means there is code merging that hasn't been read, and that is terrifying. Fix that. Review your code. Review a lot of code. Go out of your way to review too much code. You should feel sick of all the code you're reviewing. If you don't, you're not reviewing enough. If you can't metabolize the boring, repetitive code that the LLM generates, that's a skill issue on your part. How are you handling the chaos human developers turn out in a deadline? Yeah. If you think repetitive code generated by Claude is bad, you haven't seen the slop I have seen when a deadline's coming up. The last month or so, Gemini 2.5 has been my go-to. Their go-to. I'm on Claude 4 now. Almost nothing it spits out for me will merge without edits. I'm sure that's a skill issue to getting a state-of-the-art model to one-shot a feature plus merge, but I don't care. I like moving the code around and chuckling to myself when I delete all the stupid comments. I have to read the code line by line anyways. Very, very real. When I'm working in my real code bases and I let the AI generate the first pass, it's just that. It's a first pass. It's a starting point that often actually works. And then I'm going in and fixing things. And what's funny is I've actually worked with my team like this for a while, where I will do a really crappy first pass on a thing to show what I expect and how I expect it to work, put up a draft PR for my team to see. Sometimes they'll take the code, make some changes and merge it. Sometimes they'll see what I was doing, close my PR, and go make a better one actually doing the stuff. All of these are awesome. I support all of these workflows. And if you treat the AI the same way, you'll have a really good time. If you don't, if you expect it to do everything for you, you're just lazy. What about hallucination? If hallucination matters to you, your programming language has let you down. Whew! I love this author. Oh, I was touching on that earlier, but they killed it. Agents lint. They compile and run tests. If their LLM invents a new function signature, the agent should see the error. They can feed it back to the LLM, which says, oh, right, I totally made that up. And then it tries again. You'll only notice this happening if you're watching the chain of thought log that your agent generates. Don't do it. This is why I like Zed's agent mode. It begs you to tab away and let it work, and then pings you with a desktop notification when it's done. I didn't know it did that. That's actually really cool. I'm sure there are still environments where hallucination matters, but hallucination is the first thing developers bring up when someone suggests using LLMs, despite it being a more or less solved problem. But the code is shitty, like that of a junior dev. Does an intern cost $20 a month? Because that's what Cursor costs. Obligatory, I'm an investor in Cursor, account for bias there, but Cursor, Windsurf, Zed in their agent mode, Copilot inside of VS Code and all the crazy stuff you can do with that there, all of these things have gotten really, really good. I have an intern that I'm paying a lot more than $20 a month, and he does incredible things, but he's also using these tools to do those incredible things. So it's, yeah, the fact that you can get code that is of the same bar as a junior dev, but most importantly, you don't feel bad yelling at them when it sucks, because that's the worst part of a junior dev is the fifth time in a day they do something stupid, you feel bad because you know you're demoralizing them, saying, hey, that's not good enough. Hey, can you try that again? Hey, we can't merge that. It feels bad. And it feels extraordinarily bad to close their PR because it's not good enough. An AI will not give a fuck if you close their PR. An AI will not give a fuck if you tell it needs to try again. An AI will not feel personally about it. And that is awesome. It's like an intern that is way faster, knows where everything in your code base is already, and you can tell to do whatever you want over and over again and won't get burnt out or tired of it, and you won't feel bad telling it to fuck off because its code sucks, because it's not a person. It's an AI. A big part of being a senior dev is making less capable coders productive, be they fleshy or algebraic. I fucking love this article, man. I talk about this so often, especially with like companies that I'm advising. They'll often insist like, we can only hire senior engineers because junior engineers write bad code and they take things down. What you're saying when you say that is that you're a junior engineer. Experienced engineers aren't writing better code than juniors. They are building better systems than juniors. They are building systems that are resilient to the changes that these less experienced engineers would make. I'm going to say a bold thing, and I am sorry to everybody affected by this one. I am still the best developer at Ping. Julius is giving me a run for my fucking money. I'll give him credit there. But I am still the most like in the know, understanding of how all the parts come together and the system design that makes T3 chat and all the other things we build function. Other than upload thing, I don't know shit about how it works now. Julius is fully taking that over. But T3 chat, I am the one who gets how it works. I need you to understand that this is not me bragging. It's actually the opposite. I am ashamed of the fact that up until the convex port, any change to our data layer or our sync engine had to be done by me. Because if anyone else touched it, it would break. Because I did a terrible job architecting it. I made it work and it solved a bunch of problems that were really hard to solve. I was proud of the benefits we got from it. But I designed something that sucked to work in unless you were deeply experienced in the intricacies of those sync engines. And I was close to buying out a company because one person there was so good at sync engine design stuff that I knew if I acquired them, he could take over it for me. And I needed someone that good. And then I accepted reality, which is that we're building a chat app that is wrapping LLMs. We don't need one of the 3 best engineers in the world to maintain our data layer. I need to fix the shit. I need to grow up, be a good engineer, and make it so people who are not as absurd as I am can make something of this quality and can make things that don't take down production when we make changes. I needed an architecture that wasn't just capable, wasn't just functional, wasn't just able to solve these problems. I needed an architecture that the rest of my team could make changes to confidently. And we now have that. With the convex change. I had to eat a lot of my own ego because there were things that I convinced myself we did better with my sync engine than convex could. And I was wrong, and I got over it. And the more we dove in, the more I realized not only is this architecture way better and easier to understand, now everyone on the team can contribute to it. Now everyone can add new features. Now we are unblocked from all the cool things we want to ship. We don't need Theo to do the work anymore. That also means we don't need other employees to either. We can have whole features now implemented by agents because the code is simple enough. All of the infra lives in a directory that's named convex. And with a single link to the documentation, everything that's needed for that exists right there. That is so cool. Instead of buying a company for like $1 million, I moved over to a better architecture that made more sense for what we were doing, that was easier to maintain. And now I'm hiring interns that are in high school and they are shipping unbelievably great stuff. To be fair, that intern is particularly cracked and he'll be a better dev than me in like 6 months. That aside, the fact that now the whole team can contribute is a level up for me. If I was a bad engineer, and to stay on the architecture I built would be a cope, me pretending that I am a great engineer and this needs that type of engineering, when in reality, a truly senior developer, somebody who's higher in their experience chain, somebody who would have like a staff position at a company, they're not writing really complex code. They are thinking through complex problems so they can write simple enough code that everyone else can contribute. Back to the article, because I love this. Any one sentence can set me off on a tangent because it's so good. Using agents well is both a skill and an engineering project all on its own, of prompts, indices, and especially tooling. I am curious what he links here. Did SemGrep just get a lot more interesting? I'll read this later. LLMs should only be producing shitty code if you let them. Yes. Absolutely yes. Maybe the current confusion is about who's doing what work. Today, LLMs do a lot of typing, Googling, and test cases, and edit, compile, test, debug cycles. Also, 100% of all the bash code you should author ever again. Sorry, bash cop. We have someone who can write the bash for us now. I haven't written a complex bash command in such a long time. I just have AI do it every time now. But even the most Claude-poisoned serious devs in the world still... But even the most Claude-poisoned serious developers in the world still own curation, judgment, guidance, and direction. Now let's stop kidding ourselves about how good our human first cuts really are. I will never pretend that my code is good on the first pass. I am regularly impressed that the shit that I put out the first try actually runs. It's pretty nuts. But it's bad at Rust. It's hard to get a good tool chain for brainfuck too. Life's tough in the aluminum siding business. That's hilarious. I will say something I have been really surprised with is the people who are working on these deep, obnoxious, complex things falling in love with tools like Cursor. Two examples that immediately come to mind, because these were things that I just straight up thought, like, there isn't enough data. There's no way these tools will ever have work being done with AI stuff. Those two were Bun, specifically the Zig code base. Another one I thought a lot about is Porphyr, the Wasm JS runtime. These are two projects that I have the highest of high respects for. They are both JS runtimes. Bun's a lot more too. But these two things are some of the most terrifying code bases I have ever read. These code bases are doing absurd things that no normal dev should ever have to write, that there are no references for online at all right now. And it does them really well. I know so many people at Bun that say they tab complete 80% of their work now. It's still not that great when you command I and try to get it to generate a whole feature for you, but it is super good within the context of the file of auto-completing as you go. Porphyr is another one of those super complex things where it's doing crazy WASM like assembly browser code. And I talk with the dev a lot. Canada Honk is one of the smartest people I know, and watching them slowly get AI pilled has been a huge oh shit moment for me. Honestly, one of the biggest I have had was having them reach out like, hey, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this new model. I've been using it in Cursor and it's been helping me a lot for my work. I'm like, wait, you're using Cursor for your work now? What? The smartest people I know are all making the plunge. And I never thought I would see that day. My assumption was we'd see a lot of people vibe coding on Bolt or V0 or Lovable, and then a bunch of smart people writing the hard parts behind the scenes. And that is happening. But those smart people are using Cursor, V0, and to be clear, that is happening. But those same smart people are now behind the scenes using tools like Cursor and Claude Code and Codex and all this stuff to do the busy parts of their work too. Because even the best devs are mostly doing busy work because most code is tedious and dumb. If I was to go through my snitching bench code base here and read through what is or isn't tedious, imports, most tedious thing in the world. That's 22 lines of bullshit. Type definitions, useful, but tedious as hell. More and more of them. We haven't even gotten to actual code and we're 60 lines in. That's over a fifth of the way through this file. Tests to run. This is a giant JSON blob of the tests I want to run. And if I want to change this from email to contact, watch what happens. Tab. I don't want that one. Go down here. Oh, I do want to change that one. Look at that. That is so good. When you make these types of changes, the tedious parts are way faster. So this is all still tedious code. Here we are filtering and sorting markdown, adding it to this input messages field, then returning it. This entire, we are now 130 lines into a 400 line file, and it's all just tedious bullshit. That's where we're at. Also, another fun one, Ghosty, the terminal that I use, which is all Zig machine code. Apparently, Mitchell said he's auto-completing most of the code even he is writing. I would really love for these editors to ship a feature where it tracks what percentage of code is tab completed or not, so I could have my own numbers. Because I would guess I'm in the 60 to 70% range nowadays, at least, where tab complete, I'll do a thing once and then tab complete the rest of it. It's so nice. We are there now. Even Gabriel is surprised by this, and I was too. It took me a while to realize these smart people are doing this shit. Also, yeah, cursor at the end of the year. I want it so bad. We will absolutely be doing a T3 chat wrap of some form. I got to write a lot of code for that. Well, agents have to write a lot of code for that, but you get the idea. A lot of skepticism probably isn't really about LLMs. It's projection. People say LLMs can't code. What they really mean is LLMs can't write Rust. Fair enough. But people select languages in part based on how well LLMs work with them. So Rust people should get on that. And they surely will. The Rust community takes tooling seriously. Also, I've had people in chat since I started talking about this saying that it's actually really good at writing Rust too. That said, the author mostly writes in Go. I'm confident that the designers of the Go programming language didn't set out to produce the most LLM legible language in the industry. They succeeded nonetheless because Go has just enough type safety and extensive standard library into culture that prizes often repetitive idiom. LLMs kick ass at generating it. All this is to say, I write some Rust, I like it fine. If LLMs and Rust aren't working for you, I feel you. But if that's your whole thing, we're not having the same argument. Oh shit, NMG with a 30 bomb. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the gifts. We got to start wrapping this one up because I got to go to a thing. Let's blast through the rest. What about the craft? Do you like fine Japanese woodworking? All the hand tools and sashimono joinery? Me too. Do it on your own time. I have a basic wood shop in my basement. I could get a lot of satisfaction from building a table. And if that table is a workbench or a grill table, sure, I'll build it. But if I need like a table for people to sit at in my office, I buy a fucking table. This is so good. I love this article so much. Professional software developers are in the business of solving practical problems for people with code. We are not, in our day jobs, artisans. Steve Jobs was wrong. We do not need to carve the unseen feet into the sculpture. Nobody cares if the logic board traces are pleasingly routed. If anything we build endures, it won't be because the code base was beautiful. I would bet that the beauty of the code base, I bet if we took a bunch of startups and measured how beautiful their code base was relative to how likely they were to succeed, if anything, it's an inverse ratio. Probably no correlation, but my guess is inverse. Besides, that's not what really happens. If you're taking time carefully golfing functions down into graceful, fluent, minimal functional expressions, alarm bells should ring. You're yak shaving. I'll say my CTO Mark has a lot of fun playing code golf with like Advent of Code. He'll see how effectively he can squeeze the entire solution down to like one line of code. And that's really fun and cool, but he's doing it for Advent of Code, not for the things we're shipping to our users. And knowing the difference there is essential. Let fun code be fun, let work code be work. Make work code easy enough that you can have fun doing it. The real work has depleted your focus. You're not building, you're self-soothing. Whew, bars. That one got me speechless. I've done that a lot. I'm just going to keep going because that's going to hurt deep. Oof. But wait for it. That's something LLMs are good for. They devour schlep and clear a path to the important stuff where your judgment and value actually matters. This has been my experience a ton. When I realized that if I instead of starting the project as soon as I have the idea, then running into problems and spending a week trying to fix it, if I just put more thought in initially, like how do I want to architect this? How do I want the parts to come together? I get the idea for it in my head. I might spend 3 times more time thinking about it before I start, but then the LLM can take my thoughts, take my prompt on how I want this to work, get something 70% of the way there relatively quick, and then I can do in 3 hours of thinking and 1 hour of work what used to take 1 hour of thinking, 10 hours of work, and then 10 more hours of thinking after. It's entirely flipped how I structure work in my head and in my practice. And it means I can spend more time on the thing that honestly to me is more fun, which is structuring and architecting how all the parts come together. I spend a lot more time in Excalibur on my streams than I do in my editor. And that's not just for show. That's how I work and think. I spend much more time in my day job writing code in here, not on there. But the mediocrity. As a mid-late career coder, I've come to appreciate mediocrity. You should be so lucky as to have it flowing almost effortlessly from a tap. We all write mediocre code. Mediocre code is often fine. Not all code is equally important. Some code should be mediocre. Maximum effort on a random unit test, you're doing something wrong. Your team lead should correct you. Developers all love to preen about the code. They worry LLMs will lower the ceiling for quality, maybe, but they're also raising the floor. Gemini's floor is higher than my own. My code looks nice, but it's not as thorough. LLM code is repetitive, but mine includes dumb contortions where I got too clever trying to dry things up. I just showed one of those where I was popping instead of shifting. That's a mistake the agent would probably not have made. LLMs aren't mediocre on every axis. They almost certainly have a bigger bag of algorithmic tricks than you do. Radix tries, topological sorts, graph reductions, LDPC codecs. And LDPC, I'll reread that. They almost certainly have a bigger bag of algorithmic tricks than you do. Radix tries, topological sorts, graph reductions, and LDPC codes. I'll say, I'm a big functional programming bro. I still forget the specific order of things when writing a reducer in JavaScript. The fact that it can be written by itself is still so magical to me. It's so nice. Humans romanticize rsync. Andrew even wrote a paper about it. To an LLM, it might not be that much more interesting than a SQL join. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It doesn't matter. If truly mediocre code is all we ever get from an LLM, that's still huge. It's that much less mediocre code that humans have to write. I absolutely agree there. Most code either is mediocre or probably should be. But that means most humans are writing mediocre code all the time. And if AI can take that from us, that's massive. It's let me be much more comfortable maintaining much larger amounts of code because I'm not the one doing it. It's great. But it'll never be AGI. I don't give a shit. Smart practitioners get wound up by the AI and VC hype cycle. I can't blame them, but it's not an argument. Things either work or they don't, no matter what Jensen Huang has to say about it. But they're taking our jobs. So does open source. We used to pay good money for databases. That's actually a hilarious point. That is actually a really funny point. We're a field premised on automating other people's jobs away. Productivity gains, says the economists. You get what that means, right? Fewer people doing the same stuff. Talk to a travel agent lately, or a floor broker, or a record store clerk, or a darkroom tech. When this argument comes up, libertarian-leaning VCs start the chant, lamplighters, creative destruction, new kinds of work. Maybe. But I'm not hypnotized. I have no fucking clue whether we're going to be better off or... But I'm not hypnotized. I have no fucking clue whether we're going to be better off after LLMs. Things could get a lot worse. LLMs really might displace many software developers. It's not a high horse we get to ride. Our jobs are just as much in tech's line of fire as everyone else's have been for the last 3 decades. We're not East Coast dock workers. We won't stop progress on our own. But that's plagiarism. Artificial intelligence is profoundly, and probably unfairly, threatening to visual artists in ways that might be hard to appreciate if you don't work in the arts. We imagine artists spending their working hours pushing the limits of expression. But the median artist isn't producing gallery pieces. They produce on brief, turning out component illustrations and compositions for magazine covers, museum displays, motion graphics, and game assets. I'll even take some fault here. I kind of feel bad for my editor FaZe. He works his ass off, and he is an incredibly talented video editor. he does not get to show off his talents much running this channel. He will have a lot of fun in the intro because the intro is really important. And as I'm sure you guys have seen, the first 30 to 60 seconds, he'll put the extra effort in to really flex his skill and make it more compelling. But the rest is him turning my nonsense rant into a shorter, slightly less nonsense rant. Occasionally, there's the fun piecemealing of I filmed something else later, he has to stuff it in the right spot. But none of that is showing off his technical capabilities as an editor. If he could automate more of that work and his editing tools made those parts easier, he could spend more time on the fun things like the fancy start of the videos. He could work with more people and get more done. Automating the frustrating parts of his job might mean he can take someone else's job, but more importantly, it means he can spend time on the parts he finds fun that also help make my videos better. There is a future where AI can help improve our pipeline in the videos. But right now, we don't need AI for my video process because FaZe is a fucking god and you can edit an hour-long video in under an hour. So as much as we want to pretend arts are about the art, they aren't very often. The vast majority of art is meant to fill a space, not fill your heart. And it sucks that there are people who dedicate their lives to making heartfelt pieces that have no path to make money on it. But I come from the music world. This has been the case the entire time I was exploring and still am deep in the music world. The vast majority of people watching this video make more money than musicians that you listen to on Spotify. Not the biggest ones, but the medium-sized ones. I know a lot of rappers that seem really big that make a lot less money than my team does. And that sucks. The arts not being compensated properly for their work has been a shitty thing for a very, very, very long time. AI makes it more visible, but it doesn't necessarily make a new problem. The problem's always existed. We're just using this existing problem to be mad at a thing that we want to be mad at. And that sucks. But it is what it is. LLMs easily, to a point where it's alarming, can clear industry quality bars. Gallingly, one of the things they're best at is churning out just good enough facsimiles of human creative work. I have a family in visual arts, the author, not me. He can't talk to them about LLMs. He doesn't blame them, though. They're probably not wrong, because this is a huge, harmful impact on their world. Meanwhile, software devs spot code fragments seemingly lifted from public repos on GitHub, and they lose their shit. What about licensing? If you're a lawyer, I defer. But if you're a software dev playing this card, cut me a little slack as I ask you to shove this concern up your ass. No profession has demonstrated more contempt for intellectual property. Bars. The median dev thinks Star Wars and Daft Punk are public commons. The great cultural project of developers has been opposing any protection that might inconvenience a monetizable media sharing site. Is Twitter back up? Because I want to show this in action. It is. It's really weird how we decided what creators do and don't deserve to get paid. Movie directors, they deserve millions. Authors and musicians, meh, should be free. I'll support if I want. YouTubers, screw them. I'm skipping the ad. The replies on this are mostly people saying, how dare you think you deserve to be paid as a YouTuber? No one likes ads. That should all be free. And that's coming from a separate original post that was... that all came from a separate original post that was complaining about how books should always be free because information should be free. I want to find my other sponsor block post. My new video has been up for 7 minutes. The sponsor block people have already submitted timestamps. These people are insane. Let's see if I can find my reply. Someone said, shout out to those hardworking folks. The really hard work of submitting 2 timestamps. They work so hard. I said, I swear you guys value the work, I swear you guys value their work more than the creators making the content. To which I got ratioed with someone saying yes. You fuckers don't care about intellectual property. I know that for a fact. So stop pretending you do now because AI is good. I don't want to get into the sponsor block thing. I'll do this another time. My quick TLDR is that if you watch the first 5 seconds of my ad, think it's not relevant to you and skip it, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you automating that. I love the little button that appears in YouTube with the skip button. And if it comes up when you don't think the thing is relevant to you and you click it, cool, awesome. It's my job to make the ad relevant to you. And if I fail at that, awesome, skip away. But if you install a tool that automatically skips it before you know if it's relevant or not, you are stealing. That is theft. You don't care about the hundreds of hours I and my team put in and the fact that those sponsors are the only reason the channel can run. And you value someone spending 5 seconds to submit a timestamp more than the hundreds of hours I and my team put in. You're a bad person. You're operating in bad faith, and you better shut the fuck up about AI taking your job. Anyways. When they fail at policy, they route around it with coercion. We've seen this so often. Actually, no, go up to this point. So back to the article. This is very much a thing in the world that we are in here. The great cultural project of developers has been opposing any protection that might inconvenience a monetizable media sharing site. Or more importantly, it might be protection that inconveniences you as the viewer because you have to spend 5 seconds deciding if the ad's relevant to you or not. When they fail at policy, they route around it with coercion. They stand up global scale piracy networks and sneer at anybody who so much as tries to preserve a new release window for a TV show. Call any of this out if you want to watch a TED Talk about how hard it is to stream The Expanse on LibreWolf. Yeah, we get it. You don't believe in IPR. Then shut the fuck up about IPR. Reap the whirlwind. If you have given zero shits about intellectual property until now, shut up. Because I know most of you don't, so shut up about it. It's all special pleading anyways. LLMs digest code further than you do. This is another point. Like, if we're talking about how transformed the thing is, if I read some source code and it goes deep in my head somewhere, and then I accidentally write the exact same code later on, the LLM changed it more than I did. And the LLM is considered copying more than I am. If you don't believe a typeface designer can stake a moral claim on the terminals and counters of a letter form, you sure as hell can't be possessive about a red-black tree. Bars. Positive case, Redux. When I started writing a couple days ago, I wrote a section to level set the state of the art of LLM-assisted programming. A bluefish fillet has a longer shelf life than an LLM take. In the time it took you to read this, everything changed. Kids today don't use agents, they use asynchronous agents. They wake up, free associate 13 different things from their LLMs to work on, make a coffee, fill out a TPS report, drive to the Mars Cheese Castle, and then check their notifications. They got 13 PRs to review. 3 get tossed and reprompted, 5 of them get the same feedback a junior dev gets, and 5 get merged. I'm sipping rocket fuel right now, a friend tells me. The folks on my team who aren't embracing AI, it's like they're standing still. He's not bullshitting me. He doesn't work in the SFBA. He's got no reason to lie. There's plenty of things I can't trust an LLM with. No LLM has any of access to prod here. But I've been first responder on an incident in Fed 4.0, not 4.0, but I've been first responder on an incident in Fed 4.0, not O4 Mini, not a smarter reasoning model, just bog standard 4.0, log transcripts, and watched it in seconds spot LVM metadata corruption issues on a host we've been complaining about for months. Am I better than an LLM agent at interrogating open source logs and honeycomb traces? No. No, I am not. To the consternation of many of my friends, I am not a radical or a futurist. I am a statist. I believe in the haphazard preservation. He uses some weird fucking words. I believe in the haphazard perseverance of complex systems, of institutions, of reversions to the mean. I write Go and Python code. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker. But something real is happening. My smartest friends are blowing it off. Maybe I persuade you. Probably I don't. but we need to be done making space for bad arguments. I agree. It's so tiring that the anti-AI people are just not, they're not talking about things that are real problems, because I want to have those conversations. It's always so frustrating to me when there's a good, nuanced conversation about problems that we can have, but we can't because the conversation is so rotted with people being wrong about it. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Somebody in chat said, just call them stupid. I wish I could. I do. But there are really smart people who still think this way. They are just deluded. And it's different. It is really different. And we need to recognize that difference because there are still smart people who think this way. More and more of them are coming around to it. But there are a lot of people who still think that way. Depends on how long it takes for them to come around. I think most of them will. So many people I was concerned wouldn't have, and I would like to think the rest will too. Let's finish this article up because this has been fucking phenomenal. But I'm tired of hearing about it. And here is where I rejoin your company. I read Simon Willison's posts, and that's all I really need. Awesome. Then he already knows who I am because Simon did a post about my thing recently. That's one of my highest honors, is that Simon did an article about my LLM snitch benchmark. That was the like, oh shit, I'm having a real impact on the space moment for me that I was really hyped about. That was so cool. I love his blog. For those who don't know, Simon Willison is one of the creators of Django, and he has become one of the like best AI research people in the industry. And that is enough for you to keep up. Or maybe watch my videos. I think they're fun, but the hype bubble sucks, and I get that. And if you don't want to be part of it, don't be part of it. But don't let the hype bubble keep you from trying out these tools. But all day, every day, a sizable chunk of the front page of HN is allocated to LLMs. Incremental model updates, startups doing things with agents, LLM tutorials, screeds against LLMs. It's annoying. But AI is also incredibly, the word I use advisedly, important. It's getting the same kind of attention that smartphones got in 2008, and not as much as the internet got. That seems about right. I think this is going to get clearer over the next year. The cool kid hotness about stochastic parrots and vibe coding can't survive much more contact with reality. I'm snarking about these people, but I meant what I've said. They're smarter than me. And when they get over this effication, they're going to make coding agents profoundly more effective than they are today. That is such a phenomenal ender to one of the best blog posts I have ever fucking read. I had a feeling when I read the first paragraph that this needed to be a video. I was right. To Thomas, thank you. You have more concretely, clearly, and entertainingly put a thing I have been feeling for a bit now, and said the things I was scared to, specifically saying that these people are smarter than you are, and they are missing out on this. I would have felt insane saying it myself, and I am so thankful you did, so I don't have to say it alone. On one hand, I am stealing his blog post for content, but on the other hand, he gave me the confidence to finally say this, and I didn't have it before. So a huge shout out to Thomas. I implore you guys, give him a follow. We're putting his Twitter link above the link to this article in the description for a reason. If someone can write this, they have a lot more to offer to the world, and I have a ton of respect for him for the way that he put this together. Thank you all for watching this with me. What a journey it has been. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Until next time, peace, nerds. That was actually fucking awesome. Yeah, I'm just leading into the joke to an extent when I say that. People will be annoying about it. Whatever, I don't care. I know I added some value there, but I would argue, even if it took that long, I added less value there than I normally do. That was such a good post. I am late to an event, so I have to run. This was an awesome stream, even if we only got 2 videos out. I loved every fucking second of that. I am sad we don't get to do this. I will try to stream later this week to cover that because it's fucking absurd. Thank you guys. I don't have time to raid. We're just going to end. See you later. Thank you always. Ta-ta, nerds. Oh, and thank you for the sub or gift bomb there. I really appreciate you guys. Sorry I don't have time to thank everybody else. I'm super fucking late. No, I appreciate and love each and every one of you guys. Bye-bye.